Chapter 538. At least at this moment, no one believed that Luo Nan had anything to do with the Blood Flame Order. Also, the general of the Order of Justice going crazy over at the Wild and had nothing to do with him. Zhang Yingying was just teasing him. From her perspective, those observers really did court death. A portion of the communication records and recordings of the scene were salvaged. Apparently, those people think that the Blood Flame Order is a plucked phoenix that can be cooked into soup at any time. They want to do something bad and frame them. They don't understand how terrifying Xia City's Earth Fiend is. They just so happened to bump into a powerful member of the Blood Flame Order passing by, and they casually wiped him out. Cat eyes beamed as she sipped her drink. She gave her own opinion, or is it an even more crude framing? Zhang Yingying nodded. It was done too simply. It wasn't ruthless enough, but it's definitely the core method of the Blood Flame Order. This is interesting. You must know that the Blood Flame Order is also branching out. The military must be very embarrassed. The situation here is subtle, but the Wilden is too messed up. A chaotic battle broke out, and the casualty rate exceeded 65%. They were so savage that they had no friends. It's not bad for you, but there are people in the society who were caught in the crossfire. You know about Metal Box, right? You have to show some appreciation later. Oh. Luo Nan responded. He didn't care about a little bit of money when it came to the funeral expenses. Zhang Yingying did not contact him just to broadcast news and ridicule. She also talked about the schedule of the elementary seminar on the night of the 14th. In order to take care of your time, your class is scheduled at night. Worker Zhai's exchange of insights is before yours. Huh. Hold on, why is Worker Zhai's first? Luo Nan suddenly reacted. He unconsciously drew in a breath of cold air. Aren't discussions always put at the back? There's no point in discussing problems that can't be solved. Her Majesty wants you to be responsible for solving problems. She said that she just wants to broaden her horizons and train of thought. You don't even know what she's thinking. You go up and start bragging, and all you brag is common stuff. Do you want others to laugh at you for the rest of your life, or at Her Majesty for the rest of her life? Zhang Yingying's words were stern and sharp. One glance was enough to tell that she had done her homework. The current process is to first discuss, form a hot topic, and then answer it. This is the correct path. What if you can't answer it? Hee. Your sister. Shui Lei, who was watching from the side, could not bear to watch. He reminded him, did you forget what Teacher Kardashian said before? Cough, the matter has not been concluded yet. I'm just providing a way of thinking. Well, is that okay? Luo Nan was delighted. He slapped Shui Lei's arm heavily. You're too good. Zhang Yingying sneered. Luo Nan suddenly felt something strange a few seconds later. He scanned his group of friends and saw that the move Shui Lei had just taught him was being replayed in the group. Below was a string of people pounding the ground while laughing wildly. There were people joining in endlessly. The formation was neat. Bamboo Pole, the cynical man with a high IQ, was the last to speak. I've just written a small automatic analysis program. You can just download it from the group. It works wonders with the Hexier. We can see how many similar keywords and key sentences Professor Luo will say in one lecture. A bunch of people applauded and praised. The 10-second man truly lives up to his name. Luo Nan had a mental breakdown. Zhang Yingying, what the hell are you doing? Zhang Yingying giggled and waved her hand. There's only one thing I'm trying to say. Communicate well with Worker Zhai and do your teaching plans seriously. Don't think too much about it. Everyone has their own specialties. At present, you'll have a better future as a lecturer and swipe credit cards for everyone. The conversation ended. Luo Nan sat on a chair and let out a long breath. There was something he really wanted to say, but in the end, he kept it in his stomach. Did a certain someone misunderstand Her Majesty Empress Wu's intentions? Shui Lei was very confused. What does swiping credit cards mean? Cat Eyes giggled as she answered, basically, the boss is currently providing remuneration for around half of the Xia City branch members. You can look at his credit card bill for the specifics. Luo Nan's lips twitched. He was too lazy to respond. At the same time, he knew that what Cat Eyes said was more or less the standard answer. Zhang Yingying's intentions were very simple. It didn't matter if Luo Nan wanted to become a one-man enemy or a 10,000 enemy. With his current strength, he still needed to carry out relevant designs within the framework of the Xia City branch. He proposed ideas and paid remuneration. The Xia City branch was responsible for carrying them out, as long as his credit didn't go bankrupt. This seemed to be in line with Her Majesty Empress Wu's train of thought, but Luo Nan really wanted to say, formatting theory and the Xia City branch's operating model are ultimately different. What Her Majesty Empress Wu wanted to see most likely wasn't how Luo Nan would play around under the latter's constraints. She wanted to see how Luo Nan would come up with a more novel and valuable framework system. Right now, Luo Nan needed to ponder over what he could bring out for others to see, and what he could hide. Of course, this was not an easy task. Hey, Nanster, your face is too red, right? Shui Lei discovered a new situation. Oh, it's nothing. Luo Nan subconsciously touched his face as he spoke. It really was a bit hot. You didn't feel anything at all before? Did you have a fever? Shui Lei grew serious. He reached out to touch Luo Nan's forehead. We martial artists either don't get sick, or when we get sick, it's a serious illness. The imbalance of body and defense, the chaotic flow of blood. These are great benefits normally, but when you get sick, you need to get them all back. The gym master often tells me about these things. You haven't been by her side for long, so I'm afraid that you don't know her well enough. Luo Nan was quite confident in his own state. He laughed and shook his head. It's really nothing. To the side, Cat Eyes was attempting to entice Roy Wen to open his mouth and speak. She saw that the two men were unable to talk clearly, so she sneered and said, maybe it's because his business is too big and he worries too much. For a while, he's feeling stifled. Luo Nan glared at her, but Shui Lei was very much in agreement. Thinking too much isn't a good thing. You need to pay more attention to your emotions. Shui Lei was helpless when it came to touching upon the core issue. He knew what sort of situation Luo Nan was facing right now, but he was unable to play a decisive role in a confrontation of this level, even though he could lend a hand. Luo Nan's complexion had already returned to normal while they were talking. But what Cat Eyes had said before was correct. He was indeed under astonishing pressure. And this pressure was brought about by the stall he had set up, some sort of order framework. Luo Nan was not limited to the framework of the Xia City branch, but he did not purely use the framework of formatting theory as his main force. To be precise, what he was using right now should be the altar framework. Yes, the altar framework that came with the fluttering curtain of rain silently covered all of Xia City and even the surrounding areas. It was the Wraith Sign's own altar framework. It was a system of rules where the winner takes all and the loser perishes. Compared to the emptiness and chaos of the formatting theory framework, this bizarre framework that had accomplished many meritorious deeds was more realistic. The Wraith Sign shuttled back and forth day and night for 2 days. It weaved an invisible spider web that penetrated the hearts of the people within the enormous Xia City. Thanks to Her Majesty Empress Wu, she informed Luo Nan of the identities of the capital spokespersons, brokers, and officials. She also allowed Luo Nan to grasp a bit of thread. Using this as a basis, Luo Nan extrapolated layer by layer, exposing a large amount of hidden details and veins. Luo Nan did not let a single one of the people connected, hung, or strung together. Luo Nan let the Wraith Sign move freely. From ability users to normal people, from soldiers to officials, from capital spokespersons to various interest groups, as long as it could permeate, the Wraith Sign would visit them one by one. It rapidly spread. The results were plentiful at this moment. That's right, the results were plentiful. It was easy to talk about, but one had to actually put it into action. In the hearts of tens of thousands of people, including the hearts of the powerful individuals whose strength was above Luo Nan's, the invisible poisonous threads were absolutely not an easy task. The Wraith sign was able to do this because Luo Nan was forced to do it. Luo Nan was able to point out a direction because he was forced by the environment. He couldn't be considered to be a particularly intelligent person, but the terrible environment forced him to think. He pondered over whether or not there was a consistent clue amidst the waves of unrest. Was there a core that he could grasp? He thought to himself at first. Rui Wen was Miss 2000s. She appeared to be the core pursuit of all actions. He and his relatives were merely a stepping stone to realizing this pursuit. But upon closer examination, could Rui Wen be the ultimate pursuit of those people? Clearly not. Those people had captured Rui Wen, and they wanted to exchange her for the legendary 16 billion or 2000s. They wanted to use her as a stepping stone to seek an even higher level of benefit and authority. And so, one level after another. One step after another. There was no end to it. And at the end of the boundless stairway to heaven, there was a faintly discernible silhouette projection. It was nothing more than the word benefit. Luo Nan didn't dare to say that he had seen through something, but he was indeed forced to come to a realization. All powers, all powerful enemies, from beginning to end, were nothing more than people who pursued benefit. It was said, the world is bustling with activity, all for benefit. The world is bustling with activity, all for benefit. It was hard to differentiate. Reality proved that the core of the clue Luo Nan grasped was not misplaced. The human-faced arachnid possessed terrifying instincts. It had infiltrated its way down through this channel, eroding the hearts of people. It was successful in every endeavor. With the fetters of benefit, the incorporeal spider silk was able to form firm reins. From this, it formed an enormous spider web that covered the entirety of Xia City. It pierced into the hearts of tens of thousands of people, endlessly expanding. The area covered by the spider web was the location of the law of the altar. The people of the world sought benefit, and the altar gave it to them. This wasn't an incorporeal benefit. It wasn't a petty benefit. Instead, it was a great benefit that truly pointed straight to the core of life. It was the highest level of benefit that Luo Nan could give. Luo Nan's eyes widened slightly. The vast void that his mind touched was covered with layer upon layer of spider webs. They reached up to the heavens and down to the earth, connecting to the hearts of people. Pure life force flowed within this complex web that was indistinguishable from reality. It was to the extent that every thread and every corner of this complex spider web system was dyed with an endlessly fluctuating bloody light. The spider web was also a transportation network. Within the area covered by the law, it truly extended in all directions. There was no place it couldn't reach. Luo Nan used benefit to knock down the defenses of the hearts of tens of thousands of living beings. At the same time, he bestowed the convenient services of this transportation network, under the basic rule of, the winner takes all, the loser dies. The purest and most valuable part of the vitality essence of every loser in the system would be instantly transmitted to all the survivors, and they would share it and eat it together. Everyone was like this. There was no difference. Luo Nan had conducted tests in both the open sea and the inland at the same time. He was certain that the slaughter directly formed by the puppet Mo Luan was recognized by the system of rules under actual combat conditions. There were no problems. The chaotic warfare indirectly controlled by the believer base was also okay. Of course, Luo Nan needed to test further relationships to see whether or not the system could still achieve the desired results. But for now, Luo Nan had already gradually tightened the encirclement and suppression of Xia City. He had initially evolved it into a sacrificial activity under the framework of the altar. Within this domain, everyone used their own lives as sacrifices. They were placed on the altar, even though they were completely unaware of this. Everyone had ample opportunities to obtain benefits that exceeded imagination from the established rules, even though they were still ignorant and unaware. Right now, it was hard to say who held the advantage. But one thing was clear, practically all the hunters had already been incorporated into the system of rules that Luo Nan controlled. They had to act according to the rules that Luo Nan had drawn out. Thus, Luo Nan's framework of being a match for 10,000 was accomplished. Chapter 539. Finally, they finished their lunch with much difficulty. After the meal, Chinikuan and Gauda went to arrange the security team's shifts. Cat Eyes began to fulfill her babysitting duties. She tried to get Roy-1, who was used to being cold and aloof, to integrate into the large group as soon as possible. Shuelei originally had something he wanted to discuss with Luo Nan, but worker Zhai called at this time to discuss matters regarding tonight's gathering. Everything else was fine, but Di Weiwu had the temperament of a child. Some things slipped out of his mouth. Even if everyone had a tacit understanding, it would still be a bit awkward. Worker Zhai and Luo Nan set up a few topics in advance. When the time came, they would do their best to lead in that direction. After talking for a while, they naturally entered the domain of the class and discussion on the night of the 14th. In any case, Worker Zhai was a guest teacher of a large society of Acumen College. He had plenty of experience in training and teaching. He saw that Luo Nan was a bit scared, so he gave Luo Nan an idea. "I'll write down my thoughts first. Later on, we can discuss seriously based on this draft. Let's see if there are any areas that are more meaningful or controversial. We can use this to extend the main points and outline of your class. Actually, this is exactly the same as tonight. I'll be the assistant. You'll be the main speaker. I'll guide. You expound. We'll work together to fool." Luo Nan expressed his thanks again and again. He made a preliminary appointment with Worker Zhai. They would meet on Wednesday, which was the night of the 12th. They would pull an all-nighter and finish all the teaching materials. They would set aside a day for Her Majesty Empress Wu to review it. Then they would go to the execution grounds. No, to the lectern. The call ended, and Luo Nan got up and stretched his back. He habitually performed 2 stretching motions. After Gym Master Xiu's training, Luo Nan was able to perform similar motions in a professional manner. As his limbs moved, his entire body's joints, muscles, bones, skin, and so on contracted and relaxed. His blood energy rose and fell, so much so that he could hear the gurgling sound of blood flowing. This had nothing to do with guiding. In a second or two, Luo Nan's cheeks, neck, and even his shoulders and back, which were covered by his clothes, were covered with a layer of bright red light. The surface temperature of his body rose a bit, and he even felt a bit swollen. Fortunately, he discovered it early this time. When he closed his eyes, the divine will and body will were coupled together. His internal organs, tendons, bones, meridians, and acupoints interacted with each other. Yin and yang rose and fell. This sudden surge of vital energy circulated and spread to his limbs and bones to strengthen his foundation. Sigh. Shuelei opened his mouth, but then cut it off. He felt a little awkward, as though he was crying wolf. This was already the second time he had seen Luo Nan's face turn red. But this time, it dissipated even faster. It nearly made him think that it was an illusion. "Are you blushing again?" Luo Nan knew that Shuelei was worried. He simply gave Shuelei a vague explanation. "Maybe it's because I've been trying to couple my body and soul to a deep level for the past 2 days. But now that I'm awake, I feel like I'm improving very quickly." On the other side, Cat Eyes was sitting next to Roy-1. Wen Yen shot a glance over and sneered silently. Luo Nan's skin was getting thicker and thicker now. He turned a blind eye. Actually, this current phenomenon was due to the problem that Cat Eyes had just pointed out. The stall was too large. The altar frame needed to be erected, and Luo Nan needed to bear enormous pressure. But he really did use his identity as the provider and defender of the frame order to enjoy transcendental privileges. Due to the existence of the rule of winner takes all, the altar frame system allowed people to die and their life force to be stripped away. This portion of energy could not be extracted. Instead, it would continue to be assimilated into the frame, stimulating and strengthening all the surviving participants. Everyone was treated equally. But the problem was that when people entered the altar frame, it was like entering a casino. Of course, there was the possibility of profit, but they would also have to pay service fees and administrative fees for this possibility of falling from the sky. Plus, Luo Nan's own closed system was interspersed within. A considerable portion of the hidden benefits seeped through the drip irrigation. Little by little, they accumulated. The Wraith sign didn't seem to care much about all of these benefits. He just helped the Blood Soul Temple devour a bit, realizing replenishment. The rest went through the large production line of the closed system, undergoing purification and assimilation into Luo Nan's boundlessly vast God Gear icy ocean. A portion was offered to the soul cloak that continued to expand, and the rest was coupled to drive the body gear to revolve. The gear set of the God Gear and body gear seemed to have been added with maintenance fluids and lubricants. It was also like a layer of furnace fire was wrapped around it, nourishing and tempering it without end. This was the part that Luo Nan told Shuelei. The 9 orifices and 6 roots pattern ensured the efficiency of absorption and the direction of advancement. Gym Master Shio once modestly said that there was nothing more he could teach Luo Nan. But the basic pattern he helped Luo Nan establish was one of the most important links in this virtuous cycle. This brought about a change in Luo Nan's root receptacle, a positive change in quantity, and even a change in quality. Luo Nan didn't know what his current progress was when it came to purely calculating the power of the body and soul structure. After all, this was not a game. Everything could be digitized. However, the analysis progress of a few new elements in the virtual brain interface was extremely clear, and it had increased by a large margin. This was especially true for the Blood Soul Temple and the Mo Luan puppet. They seemed to be quite fond of this. After some replenishment, the analysis progress of both broke through 10% in a single morning. But none of this could compare to the inconceivable bug in the Jintong's psychic light seed. Its analysis progress had already reached 90%. Though the speed had slowed down, it had not stopped yet. And this was not all. Luo Nan discovered an hour ago that the external neurons seemed to have been touched by a certain link within. Electricity spread out, and a new round of searching began. This time, the search was no longer limited to the closed system. It spread out. Fortunately, it was quite hidden. It was like the most ordinary electromagnetic wave of the current era. Its source was obscured, and it relied on the spider web of rain that covered the entire city to spread outwards. Luo Nan combed through the internal and external situation, and he could not help but sigh. Of course, it was good to have this kind of progress, but could he just ignore it once he had made an in-progress discovery? He no longer held any illusions regarding his journey over the next few days. With this intensity and density, even if his organizational coordination technique was upgraded to another level, it would still not be enough. At this time, Shuelei finally walked forward. At the same time, his gaze swept a circle into the distance. He knew that it was unnecessary, but he still lowered his voice. Nanster, I just so happen to have something to tell you. Luo Nan had long since sensed that Shuelei had something to say. He immediately nodded and sat with Shuelei in the coffee corner of the hall. This place was originally a good place to enjoy the bright and beautiful sunlight, but right now, all he could see were the raindrops pounding against the window. Shuelei spoke just as they sat down. I was chatting with the gym master yesterday. The old man advised me that I should put a portion of my energy into human-computer interaction in the future. Luo Nan was already used to being distracted and considering other matters. Even with his organizational coordination technique, his reaction was still a beat slower. He subconsciously repeated, human-computer interaction? It's like an exoskeleton or something. Shuelei lowered his voice even more. He was even a bit embarrassed. Luo Nan immediately understood. Deep Blue Walker? This time it was Shuelei's turn to blush. Luo Nan laughed in spite of himself when he saw Shuelei's reaction. Do I look very narrow-minded? He then nodded after teasing Shuelei. The gym master's suggestion is certainly correct from a practical point of view. God was the strongest of the several burners in the security team. His strength was roughly C after undergoing transformation. But with Shuelei's current abilities, he would be able to win if he were to fight God barehanded, even if God had an advantage in combat experience. After all, Shui Lei's close combat ability had already broken through the limits of ordinary people under Gym Master Xiu's tutelage. He didn't dare speak of his architect rank, but he had definitely reached the C+ level. It was the highest level among awakened. But if God were to wear the deep blue walker exoskeleton, Shui Lei wouldn't even have the chance to escape if the two were to fight again. This was the power of technology and the flourishing development of the archetype format theory. It was a bonus to individual combat power. A fleshly ability user like Shui Lei lived in the worst era, but it was also the best era. The upper limits of traditional martial arts were unable to cross the barrier formed by technology. But the environment that nurtured ability users, as well as the development and growth of theories like the archetype format, allowed them to seamlessly connect with the most cutting-edge technology of today. This was the great framework of today's world. Only by entering it could one obtain the greatest bonus. Luo Nan didn't enter this framework, but he wouldn't deny that this path was correct. Shui Lei's worries were uncalled for. Luo Nan himself couldn't avoid seeking inspiration from the archetype format. What qualifications did he have to obstruct Shui Lei's path of advancement? Therefore, he didn't speak hypocritical and emotional words. Instead, he cut straight to the point. It seems that the deep blue walker is unavoidable. Does it not affect your previous cultivation? Shui Lei let out a sigh of relief when he saw Luo Nan's reaction. He replied, "It's impossible to directly go and transform it. The gym master wants me to first observe and experiment. I want to treat the format of fire as a cultivation model to research. Therefore, I want to first discuss and compare notes with Brother God." Luo Nan nodded and raised his own suggestion. You can also use the burner simulator researched by the military and Quantum Corporation. They have it at Frost River Reality. If you need authority, you can just apply to the society. You can also report to the military. I'm afraid that they're looking forward to having a martial imparting expert like you as a guinea pig to provide experimental data. Luo Nan suddenly thought of Bai Xinyan as he spoke. It was this female doctor who used the burner simulator to reveal to him the unstoppable development of the archetype format. But according to authoritative intelligence, Bai Xinyan was the main culprit that caused all of the current troubles. Even Mr. Bai had solemnly apologized to him for this. Luo Nan had a general understanding of the reason why this father-daughter pair had a falling out. It was impossible to say that Luo Nan didn't hate her, but Luo Nan still wasn't used to the rhythm of changing identities between friend and foe. He wasn't used to it, but it didn't hinder his cognition. It also didn't bring him too much trouble. Chapter 540. Luo Nan used benefits as a primer to successfully infiltrate the human-faced arachnid's poisonous silk into the hearts of the millions of people in Xia City. This showed that his train of thought was correct. It was just that everyone chased after different benefits during the specific implementation. What they were sensitive to and what they were desensitized to were all different. The Wraith sign was the one who truly dealt with these detailed problems. This inconceivable demon had already surpassed the limits of Luo Nan's understanding of how to infiltrate layer by layer and how to succeed. He could only sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. But in his subsequent observations, he discovered that specific to the region of Xia City, specific to this 2 out of 1,000 incident, the ever-changing benefits naturally condensed into a few typical images and symbols. After all, humans were more accustomed to drawing on concrete images to think about things. Rui Wen and Luo Nan were undoubtedly the clearest two of them. When the poisonous silk infiltrated the hearts of people, it adhered to greed and evil thoughts. Layer by layer, Luo Nan naturally sensed it. When a person was being targeted by hundreds and thousands of malicious thoughts at all times, they would either become numb or extremely sensitive. Luo Nan was certainly unable to become numb, so he became exceptionally sensitive to these muddy flows of sand and mud. From Luo Nan's perspective, the sacrificial framework was like a transparent cup of water. As time passed, the countless participants were like muddy water in the cup, slowly settling and purifying. What was clear and what was turbid were all revealed in sequence. Under these circumstances, Luo Nan was simply playing a traditional online game. Red, yellow, blue, and white names hung above the heads of the players. It was bizarre and absurd. It was said that the human heart was hard to fathom, but it seemed that there was no place to hide under the ruler of benefits. Though it was only limited to greed and malice toward him. Luo Nan understood this as the function of order. After order formed a relatively complete framework, it combed and cleansed all living things. Under this standard, the hunters that flocked in were insatiably greedy. There were apathetic professionals. There were those who came to have fun and join in the fun. There were all kinds of them, and they were all different. The Xia City branch was not a monolithic block. There were warm-hearted people, indifferent people, two-faced people, and people who only had the thought of currying favor and making money. Johnny and Metalbox, who died in the inn, were just two examples. Deaths were not uncommon in a group of nearly 1,000 people. It was impossible for Luo Nan to hope that everyone in the Xia City branch would love him, that everyone would be like He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, and these other friends, who would do their utmost for him. Her Majesty Empress Wu had already given him a reminder, pointed him in the right direction, and even helped him open up the credit system, allowing him to use real benefits to consolidate the power of the Xia City branch. Luo Nan received the lesson, but he could completely build on this foundation to do even more things. He could do even greater things. The puppets and believers were in charge of the specific planning and execution. For the time being, Luo Nan only needed to support the maintenance framework before the even more desperate situation arrived. He also needed to remotely command and make adjustments. At this time, he was very happy to go with Shuelei to find God and discuss matters related to the burners and the deep blue walkers. God was a veteran burner. Although he had already retired from the military, he was still inextricably linked to it. He told Shuelei frankly, the military's Deep Blue Walkers project has always been conducting research on imparting martial arts to the fleshly body. However, if you want to participate deeply in it, you'll definitely need to be registered in the military, and you'll also be subject to many restrictions. Quantum Corporation definitely has it, but the corresponding binding agreement isn't easy either. Aside from this, there was also the Frost River Reality Project, which was a collaboration between many powers. The project was relatively deep. Therefore, he was the same as Luo Nan. He recommended Shuelei to start with a professional simulator to get a feel for it. Then Shuelei and God discussed the similarities and differences between the internal energy of a burner and the internal refinement method of imparting martial arts. This had already entered a more professional level. Luo Nan very rarely interrupted, but he combined his experiences with the burner simulator with the two sides. He listened with great interest. However, they did not chat for long. God had to go deal with the security team, so the chat could only be interrupted. Shuelei had an expression of wanting to continue. His fighting spirit had already been provoked. He pulled Luo Nan and said, "Why don't we practice some Sanzhou?" Luo Nan was about to agree when Cat Eyes shouted, "You too! Come over and help." Huh! Cat Eyes and Roy Wen had been at loggerheads ever since she received the mission the night before yesterday. She took care of Roy Wen, and she liked Roy Wen. However, she was still a bit dissatisfied with the little girl's cold and distant attitude towards life. She always wanted the little girl to do something. After unremitting efforts, she finally found a pretty decent entry point after lunch today. She pointed to the side of the living room on this floor. There was a photo frame that had just been placed there not too long ago. She giggled and said, "Look. The design on the photo might be a tradition of their Luo family." The photo Cat Eyes pointed to was the weird photo of his grandfather and father that Luo Nan had copied from his uncle this morning. No matter how tangled and complicated his heart was, Luo Nan still treasured this photo very much. He specifically found an electronic photo frame to place it in. However, he had not yet decided whether he should place it in his home or place it in the space of the dead tree with his mother's photo. He could only place it in the living room on the 4th floor of Gear. This was the place with the best lighting in Gear under sunny weather. Cat Eyes did not care about the tangled feelings in Luo Nan's heart. She seized the opportunity to urge him with all her might, "What do you mean by tradition? You pose according to the photo, I'll take a photo, and then we'll put it together. You don't even need to wait until the evening gathering. You'll be considered a member of the Luo family. As for whether you'll be a daughter or a child bride in the future, it's all a trifle. Cat Eyes revealed her intention to tease Luo Nan, but Rui Wen naturally did not respond. Cat Eyes teased Luo Nan several times to no avail, but she did not give up. Her eyeballs swiveled, and she called out to Luo Nan and the others. Rui Wen says that the restoration of a single pose isn't enough. Someone with the surname Luo, come over here. Is it really okay for you to tamper with right and wrong in front of your own boss, a mental sensing expert? But no matter what was said, Cat Eye's thoughts and actions were all for Rui Wen's good. If Luo Nan could help this little girl integrate a step further into this society, then Luo Nan really wouldn't mind making a few weird faces. So Luo Nan's ridicule was ridicule, but he did not refuse. He obediently walked over and revealed a smile to Rui Wen. Then how about we pose together? Rui Wen's clear and tranquil eyes streaked across his face. It was impossible to tell what she was leaning towards. But Cat Eyes tricked him again at this time. In the end, she did not let Shuelei go. Why don't you guys go first and demonstrate once to dispel the child's nervousness? First your friend Luo Shuepei, then your family member Luo Ruipei. There's nothing wrong with that. Shuelei's temper did not care, but he was reminded by Cat Eyes' abbreviation. He suddenly had a strange thought. When we adopt her, will Rui Wen still be called Rui Wen? Will she be called Luo Rui Wen at that time, or will she follow Uncle Luo Nan's surname and be called Imo Rui Wen? Luo Nan discussed with him very seriously. The name is just a symbol, but those two are quite hard to pronounce. Cat Eyes sneered. Don't deliberately change the topic. Do you think I don't know what you guys are thinking? Go, stand in front of the photo frame. Split into two sides. Luo Nan on the left, Shuelei on the right. Pose properly. Shuelei grinned and looked at the photo again. His eyelids twitched. We agreed that it's a demonstration. No photos. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and go. Luo Nan and Shuelei were truly in a difficult situation. They glanced at each other, but they were helpless. They could only follow Cat Eyes' instructions and stand on the two sides of the electronic photo frame. They followed the poses of the two people in the photo frame and slightly staggered their angles. Then they continued to communicate with their eyes. You first. You first. Everyone together. Okay. That kind of pose only looked funny on the photo. If they really had to do it, and if they were to do it properly, it would be truly shameful. It would have been fine if Luo Nan and Shuelei did not exchange glances. But when their gazes met, they laughed until they staggered left and right a second later. There was no hope for any other pose. As their coach, Cat Eyes was extremely dissatisfied. She clapped hard. You two idiots. What happened to being role models? Luo Nan was waiting for these words. You're the coach. You're the role model. Why don't you come up and try? From Luo Nan's perspective, this was a sharp counterattack. But reality proved that he was still too young. Young. Cat Eyes' eyebrows shot up. No problem. As an outstanding dancer, Cat Eyes could unlock all sorts of poses at any time. She felt no pressure at all from a small comedy scene. Watch closely. Cat Eyes calmly took off her jacket, revealing a skin-tight protective suit. She stepped forward and pushed Shuelei aside, standing face to face with Luo Nan. Then she raised her left leg and hooked it backward. She raised her right hand up, assuming a reverse joint position. Her left arm extended backward, and her right knee bent inward. It was as if her entire body had been frozen in a high-speed rotation. This posture was awkward no matter how one looked at it. It was funny no matter how one looked at it. But Cat Eyes was an outstanding dancer. She used these elements to perfectly portray the flexible and graceful posture of a woman. Especially since she was still wearing the skin-tight protective suit. Her undulating curves and soft waist made the two men in the room not know where to place their eyes. Luo Nan thought about how it was hard to avoid making a fool of himself, so he seized the last bit of time he had to tease Cat Eyes. Leicester, where are you looking? Shui Lei was innocently implicated, but the moment of crisis revealed his true colors. He directly responded, "Sister Cat Eye's posture isn't precise enough." Luo Nan looked at Cat Eye's. Cat Eye's posture was restored to its original state, and she raised her eyebrows. Shui Lei was right. She had indeed made some slight adjustments to her posture when she was imitating. After all, the sense of harmony and beauty of any plastic art was reflected in the details. Stiffness and gentleness were perhaps only a tenth of a curve, a hundredth of a millimeter. But she obviously wouldn't show weakness at this time. She forcefully retorted, "If you can do it, then go ahead." Luo Nan immediately seized the opportunity to pull away. Come. I'll give you this position. Compare." Cat Eyes gave him a supercilious look. Shui Lei had put himself on the stage with a single sentence. It was hard not to be embarrassed. Luckily, Cat Eyes had already demonstrated. Right now, they could be considered to be having a friendly professional exchange of pointers. In fact, he really did become a bit interested after the round of observation just now. "I think it should be like this." Shui Lei assumed the same posture as he spoke. He was over a head taller than Cat Eyes. His body was majestic, but his flexibility wasn't the least bit inferior. He wasn't the least bit afraid of the posture that Cat Eyes could assume. But when he assumed the proper posture, it really did make people feel a bit different. "Oh, it seems like it really is a bit." Cat Eyes rubbed her chin as she circled around Shui Lei. She might have been joking a bit at first, but she unconsciously became serious later on. "Is this the limit of the joints? Your ligaments are quite taut." Shui Lei maintained his posture without changing. He responded, "It's all right. This posture is actually quite reasonable. The limbs are relaxed, and the tendons and arteries receive force. If you do Daoyin or yoga, you can coordinate this posture with the starting and ending posture. It can still provide a certain amount of exercise." "Huh?" Luo Nan's heart inexplicably jumped. Cat Eyes shook her head. "There's no need to force your way up. There's no utilitarian meaning." "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Luo Nan was secretly trying it out, so he was naturally discovered. Luo Nan's face heated up under Cat Eyes' mocking gaze, but he still persevered. He searched for the feeling of the limbs being relaxed, and the tendons and arteries receiving force that Shui Lei spoke of. His thoughts drifted a bit. Grandpa and that person might joke around, relax, and the like, but if they really did leave something for me, wouldn't it have a deeper meaning? Luo Nan also felt that he was reading too much into it, but the external neuron left behind by a certain person was far too mysterious and marvelous. The method was far too secretive. It gave him a bad precedent. Give it a try. There's nothing wrong with giving it a try. Cat Eyes could not help but roll her eyes. Do you really think this is a secret martial arts manual? Can you find out the true meaning of formatting theory from this? Luo Nan's face really turned red this time. He really did have similar thoughts in the corner of his heart. Cat Eyes shook her head, but in the blink of an eye, she felt that this was a rare opportunity. Since Luo Nan had delivered himself to her doorstep, then he shouldn't blame her for being impolite. She giggled and retreated a few steps back. She prepared to find a good angle to take a picture of this rare scene. She had just chosen a position and gestured a bit. She could not help but laugh in spite of herself. "Hey, Roy-1. You really can't wait to enter the Luo family's door." She saw Roy-1, who was beside her, actually cast off her usual indifference. She copied the pose in the photo, twisting her body and exerting force. She stretched her arms and legs. Her usual wooden expression contrasted beautifully with the two serious faces in the photo. The more she acted like this, the more adorable she became. Cat Eyes laughed out loud. She formed a circle with her index finger and thumb, and the synchronized virtual lens centered around Roy-1. The three figures were encircled. She just needed to exert a bit of force with her fingertips, and the gesture response would be effective. She would record this rare scene. But at this moment, a low and deep sound wave permeated the room. The sound was like the rustling of rain falling on the eaves. It was dense like a tide crashing against the shore. For an instant, it was as if Cat Eyes was standing in the middle of a surging river. The sound of water filled her surroundings, and deep within, there was the sound of shrieking. Cat Eyes clearly wanted to exert force with her fingers, but they suddenly froze in this moment. It was hard to move an inch. Ouch! Luo Nan suddenly turned around, but he forgot his current position. He committed the lowest of mistakes. He sat solidly on the ground, ignoring the pain in his butt. He raised his head to look in astonishment. It was as if Cat Eyes had just woken up from a dream. She subconsciously exerted force with her fingers. Chapter 541. There's no need to dig into the so-called secrets of the posture itself. Everything about its form was already exposed when it was displayed. Even if it had the value of guidance, any guidance posture would only be meaningful in the complete system. If there's really something to this posture, then it could be a single moment of the entire movement. Moreover, there should be countless details hidden in places that we can't see, such as the corresponding breathing technique, the circulation of qi and blood in deeper organs, and even the coordination of spiritual methods. Shui Lei tried his best to convey and translate Jim Master Xiu's preliminary opinion. His mouth and tongue seemed to be cramping up, and it was extremely difficult for him to do so. However, there was no other choice. Jim Master Xiu didn't like using electronic devices, or rather, he couldn't use them. It was said that any electronic device on Jim Master Xiu's body would be destroyed in a few minutes. It was as if there was a powerful electromagnetic radiation source in his body that could destroy the intricate circuit structure at any moment. As for those explanations, they were naturally based on the funny poses in the photos. Luo Nan's group of people became restless from the great discovery they made at noon. They believed that they had cracked an absolutely enormous secret. But aside from Roy when succeeding a few more times, Luo Nan, Shui Lei, Cat Eyes, Qi Nikuan, God. Not a single person was able to replicate Roy Wen's results. As for Roy Wen herself, she was confused as to how such a miraculous scene had occurred and couldn't explain it. Luo Nan spent the entire afternoon in a trance. And as time passed, he became more and more irritable. He had obviously touched upon the core secret, but there was still a thin veil that he could not uncover. This feeling was too hateful. In the end, it was Shui Lei who suggested asking Jim Master Xiu about this. After all, this seemed to be the domain of body techniques. In this aspect, Jim Master Xiu could be said to be extremely authoritative. Luo Nan quickly agreed. He made a firm resolution in his heart. If Jim Master Xiu still couldn't decipher this, then he would consult Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang one by one. With the living example of Roy Wen, these apex figures should at least give him an explanation. After the afternoon classes ended and the club activity started, Shui Lei hurried back. Actually, Luo Nan wanted to go as well, but his aunt contacted him midway. She took half a day off this afternoon. She wanted to go to the Welfare Institute before dinner tonight. She wanted Luo Nan to accompany her. At the end of the day, his aunt would still be worried if she didn't do a proper investigation. Luo Nan was helpless. He could only finish the scenes in front of him. He was busy all the way until dinner time. Hall Master Xiu also found it difficult to make a decision. Luo Nan came out from the dinner table to pick up the phone. It was already 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Luo Nan's current state was very ordinary. His mental state was exerting a lot of energy. Even though he had been injected with stimulants, he still couldn't make ends meet. He tried his best to understand Jim Master Xiu's explanation. He tried so hard that his temples were throbbing, but he still couldn't find any useful clues. He couldn't help but feel resentful. But Roy Wen's situation, as soon as the words left his mouth, Luo Nan thought of the most solid reason. Roy Wen was a special case. This was because her form and soul were blended. Her inside and outside were one. Her form and soul structure didn't even need to be fixed. She just needed to find the right frequency and self-adjustment, and her internal structure could be naturally formed. In fact, Roiwen hadn't been able to succeed every time she had tried this afternoon. And the few times she had succeeded, there had been some differences in her state of mind. Luo Nan's mind was in chaos. He was at a loss. Especially when it came to details, devilish details. How did he know what the details were? There was no clue at all. If he had to figure it out, if he had to bypass all of this, was he supposed to first take Roiwen as his teacher and learn the art of form and soul fusion? But someone like Roiwen was 99% talented. Luo Nan pondered left and right, and his scalp stung. It was extremely unbearable. In this situation, it was most likely that the effects of the stimulant drug were already insufficient. Luo Nan calculated that there was around 50 hours until the drug was injected. It seemed that he would need to replenish it tomorrow. Xue Lei was still trying his best to translate Gym Master Xiu's opinion. Right now, we can't dig out anything purely from the level of body arts. If you really want to continue, there's no harm in considering two aspects. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and his head hurt even more. He sucked in a cold breath and asked, hiss. Which two? The first one is still to use body arts as a base, but do the opposite. Connect with the outside world and walk the path of combining the inside and outside. This is one of the ideal theories for imparting martial arts. The most basic method is to combine the principles of Taoyin and yoga. Start with the current breathing technique and make constant adjustments. Find a relatively reasonable point of convergence with the external environment. In this way, you need an environment overflowing with life. Right now, it's the middle of winter. Only the North Shore jungle is a bit better. But, cough. Gym Master says that this is like shooting a bird at random. It's like giving medicine to a dead horse. Luo Nan rubbed his temples and slowly nodded. This was indeed a path. The rarest thing was that Gym Master Xiu had even thought of a specific method. It was quite feasible. As for the final evaluation, Luo Nan automatically ignored it. Xue Lei was silent for a moment. He seemed to have heard Gym Master Xiu's words. Xue Lei then repeated, the second path. Gym Master says that perhaps your train of thought can be a bit more abstract. Luo Nan really didn't understand this time. Xue Lei was the same, so it was extremely awkward for Xue Lei to repeat. Gym Master means that if all attempts fail, there's no harm in introducing the elements of philosophical thinking. Introduce the posture into the theoretical system you're used to. Make it more abstract and concise. Even symbolization is fine. It's not limited to the realm of body arts. He says that you can understand. Luo Nan did understand a bit. Gym Master Xiu wanted him to connect this posture with the system of formatting theory and expand his train of thought. Actually, Luo Nan had already done this when he discovered the uniqueness of this posture, but he still didn't have a clue. Xue Lei then said, Gym Master Xiu said this much. Oh, as for Roiwen's situation, it's best if you bring her over later. Let Gym Master Xiu take a look. Gym Master Xiu basically said this much. Luo Nan didn't get the information he wanted to hear the most, but it couldn't be said that he gained nothing. However, this consumed even more of his mental strength. The blood vessels near his temples pulsed even more vigorously after he hung up the phone. Luo Nan leaned against the wall of the corridor. He closed his eyes and regulated his breathing, allowing the information, thoughts, and stimuli to flow back and forth in his mind. He finally understood that the rhetoric of mentally and physically exhausted and lighting a lamp to boil oil was absolutely not an exaggeration from the people of the world. This was especially true when he had to consider more and more fields. The scope of his mental strength was like a smashed water tank. Its water level dropped rapidly at a visible speed. This was thanks to the altar frame feeding back vital energy. It was quite a supplement. Luo Nan thought about the things he had to pay attention to. The soul cloak had already traveled nearly 3,000 kilometers out of Xia City's outer sea. The spider web altar covered the entire city. The security monitoring of each and every one of his closest family members. The intelligence gathering of various enemies. The changes in the cloud world. The changes in the external neuron. The training of the overall planning technique. Luo Nan hadn't slept for nearly 90 hours since the 8th. He stopped his daily cultivation and focused all of his mental strength on the 2000th event. But even so, he still didn't have enough time. He didn't have enough mental strength. He didn't have enough planning. He didn't have enough strength. Only thoughts, exhaustion, and impatience overflowed in his heart. They boiled endlessly. This bunch of scum, both inside and outside the city. They never stopped. Why don't I just kill a bunch of them? I'll have some peace and quiet. Fellow student, are you okay? Luo Nan's situation was quite eye-catching. A waiter from this restaurant walked over and asked about Luo Nan's situation. Letting me have some peace and quiet is the greatest care you can give me. Luo Nan suppressed this sort of annoying ridicule back into his stomach. He opened his eyes and returned a smile to this kind waiter. I'm fine. Oh, worker Zhai. The door to the corridor opened, and worker Zhai walked out. Luo Nan was shocked. Could it be that there was a problem inside? Worker Zhai looked at Luo Nan's expression and laughed. It's fine. The atmosphere is quite good. Actually, Luo Nan didn't need worker Zhai to say anything. Luo Nan was able to confirm it with his mental senses. Luo Nan's senseless reaction could only mean that his mind was in a trance. His condition was terrible. Luo Nan wasn't willing to show negative emotions in front of worker Zhai. He took a deep breath and straightened his body. What made him rejoice was that the atmosphere of this family gathering really was quite good. The smart people were mentally prepared, and the confused people continued to be confused. As such, he could only pass this peacefully. But he never expected that his aunt's excessive worry would attract Di Weiwu, who unexpectedly became the key to livening up the atmosphere. From the little guy's point of view, the cold and aloof flat-chested sister was together with Luo Nan. Luo Nan was very powerful, so that person should be very powerful as well. The dean had hinted at this before. His cheap godfather and that magic-capable Uncle Papercut had touched on his life experiences and history when they talked. Luo Nan couldn't help but be in awe of this. Also, he just couldn't find a martial arts school. He might as well take a teacher nearby and learn how to fight. That would be good. Di Weiwu's childish words carried no harm. He snuck a sip of his alcoholic drink at the table. His mouth was even harder to control, but he suddenly broke the seal on the topic of the underground fighting arena. Everyone else was worried, but Rui Wen didn't mind at all. Speaking of which, Rui Wen was in an abnormal state tonight. Ever since she met with Madame Luo Shuqing in the afternoon, she actually opened her mouth. She didn't say much, but she did answer questions. Moreover, it was absolutely not a perfunctory response like yes or no. It was usually a matter of a few words that could be thoroughly explained, and it displayed extremely shocking logic, comprehension, and even the ability to express. For example, before Luo Nan left the table, Mo Peng really couldn't hold back his curiosity. He used the reason of losing weight to ask Rui Wen about her combat training. Rui Wen answered with nutrition, focus, and talent. Her answers of 6 words directly killed Mo Peng as she explained the key points. Even if she cherished her words like gold, she still spoke more in this half-day than she did in the past few days combined. Luo Nan couldn't help but think. Was this change in Rui Wen driven by the environment? Or was it that incident at noon? Don't blame him for being oversensitive. Rui Wen was always in deep thought after the incident. Even if she was still cold and distant to outsiders, it was absolutely different from her usual empty silence. Hell. He was thinking about that position again. Luo Nan's mind was in chaos right now. Thoughts from all directions came and went far too frequently. His mind wandered a lot as he chatted with worker Zhai. Worker Zhai misunderstood. He laughed and said, "Don't worry. I see that your family's elders have a good impression of Rui Wen. They take good care of her feelings. As for that older sister of yours, she has a strong sense of justice. Mo Peng has a very kind heart. Luo Nan forced a laugh. Worker Zhai continued, besides, we won't immediately adopt her. There will always be a process of familiarity from being strangers. Take our family's Wei Wu for example. He doesn't regard himself as an outsider at all. Well, I'm really afraid that he'll get hot-headed and say some unreliable things. Let's go back. Yeah, okay. But you need to wash your face first. Rub it hard. Huh? Worker Zhai pointed at his own face. Today is a happy day. There should be a bit of color. So Worker Zhai saw it all. Luo Nan smiled wryly. He first asked Worker Zhai to go back. He ran to the bathroom and used hot water to wash his face. He did as Worker Zhai suggested. He rubbed his face hard until his skin was red and hot. Only then did he turn back. By the time he returned to the room, most of the people had finished eating and left. They were sitting on the sofa in the room, chatting over fruits and desserts. The ones who spoke were mainly his aunt and Emoya. It was just as Worker Zhai said. They took good care of Roy Wen's situation. They didn't force Roy Wen to talk. They didn't ask about her background or her background. Roy Wen was sitting with Mo Peng and Di Weiwu right now. The two boys had their arms around each other's shoulders. They were making a big fuss as they played mobile games. However, Di Weiwu was quite forthright. He rested half of his body on Roy Wen's lap so that his flat-chested sister could enjoy the wonderful game scene. Fine. This little Shoto was simply the closest person in the world to Miss 2 in 1,000. Roy Wen returned to her quiet state. Perhaps she was used to being pestered by Di Weiwu, so her body language was very natural. Perhaps she thought that Di Weiwu, who was constantly chattering away, was a large crow. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied when faced with this situation. It was his aunt who called him over. She first asked him if he had eaten his fill. After getting an affirmative answer, she directly asked him about Roy Wen's future plans. Roy Wen is still young. She had a hard time in the past. She definitely needs a normal living environment. Family is one thing, but she also needs to interact with school and society. Which school do you think she should go to? What grade do you think she should start at? Be with me? Acumen College. It'll be easier to take care of her like that. His aunt smiled. She didn't comment. She asked, do you want to develop a hobby or something like that? Luo Nan had a flash of inspiration when he heard her mention this. He thought of Gym Master Xiu's instructions and made a comprehensive plan. Roy Wen already has a foundation. I'll take her to see Gym Master Xiu in a few days. He'll definitely be willing to give her pointers. Mo Yis sneered from the side. You're the one who represents everything. Why don't you see if the little girl is willing? I say, why don't you play music with me or something? Hey, don't you think Roy Wen's voice is quite special? Luo Nan went, He was actually unable to refute. Speaking of which, he vaguely remembered that he had thought this the first time he saw Roy Wen in the underground fighting arena. He was just about to discuss this when a stimulus suddenly shot out from his brain. It transmitted a completely new piece of information into his chaotic mental space. Chapter 542. Roy Wen, we said we'd meet tomorrow. Emoya smiled as she wrapped her arms around Roy Wen's slender shoulders and whispered in her ear to confirm. Roy Wen shot a glance at Luo Nan before giving a slight nod. His aunt frowned. This is a serious matter. Don't be so careless. No matter how you look at it, I'm still considered an outstanding graduate of Acumen College and a celebrity alumnus. Roy Wen is also still in compulsory education, so it's very simple for her to join a class. Emoya made an okay gesture. She had already taken care of everything just now, handling Roy Wen's enrollment procedures and other matters. Madame Luo Shuqing reprimanded her verbally. In fact, among the three children, she trusted her eldest daughter to handle things, excluding the goddamn rock star. That was the end of tonight's gathering. It could be said that both the host and the guests enjoyed themselves. There was no need to mention Roy Wen's side. Uncle and worker Zhai were both technical personnel, and their way of thinking was very similar. Today, after a deep conversation, they unexpectedly hit it off very well, and the two of them drank a few more cups. It was hard to say when it came to techniques, but when it came to alcohol tolerance, it could be said that his uncle was completely defeated by worker Zhai, who had officially become an awakened. When the cold wind blew on him after he came out, he felt a little numb. In this way, even if the car had an automatic driving system, it would not be suitable for him to sit in the driver's seat. They came one after another. His uncle's SUV, his aunt's housewife's car, and Moya's sports car. They used a total of 3 cars. Let me do it. At the age of 16, one could already apply for a driving license for a smart car. Mo Peng had the authority in this area, but he usually didn't have the chance to do so. At this moment, he was exceptionally enthusiastic. Unfortunately, a remote driving function wiped out Mo Peng's little ambition. In the end, he only obtained the qualifications to be a puppet in the driving room. Luo Nan didn't care. In fact, he didn't even pay attention to which car he boarded in the end. At this time, his mind was occupied by the message he had just received. Almost all the mental energy he could spare was sent to it, but there was no result at all. His eyes were closed, but his consciousness was already connected to the external neuron and entered the Void Brain app. He wandered about in that extremely unfriendly interactive interface. It was from this interface that he received a notification. The analysis of the newly added element in this interface, which is the spiritual seed of Jin Tong, has reached 100%. Analysis completed. Alright, the above was just Luo Nan's imagination. God only knew what the hell the hieroglyphics on the pop-up window were. All Luo Nan knew was that when his telepathic thoughts connected to the projected icon of the soul light seed, he thought that a corner of the mysterious veil of the virtual brain app had finally been unveiled to him. But what he was faced with was yet another terrible text pop-up window. There was also an unreadable grayish-white color below. The words on the pop-up window were still indecipherable. Luo Nan was only left with 2 options of yes and no. One of the options was marked as the default choice. Other than the amount of text, this pop-up window was practically identical to the one Luo Nan encountered. Could it be that this app is here to mess with me? Right now, Luo Nan had already encountered 3 different pop-up windows in the virtual brain interface. The 3 groups of words were like 3 cold, high walls, blocking him from the core meaning, making it impossible for him to approach. Under the pop-up window, the unreadable grayish-white hue seemed to have gone in countless circles before returning to its original point. Does the app have a delete option? Luo Nan's heart was filled with resentment. He was disinclined to guess the true meaning of the pop-up window. He followed the default option and clicked on it. Then, a 4th pop-up window jumped out. WTF. Luo Nan smashed his seat heavily. He even cursed out loud in a moment of desperation. Humph. You dare to curse at me? Moya turned her head from the driver's seat. Her sharp and slender eyebrows shot up. Her expression was extremely dangerous. Luo Nan was sitting in Moya's sports car. Right now there were only him and Moya in the car. As the lead singer of a rock band, Moya's style of driving was like a violent storm. She took the lead right now, leaving the other 2 cars behind without a trace. Big sis, you're having fun. It'll be hard to be a security guard. Luo Nan sighed. He wasn't in the mood to play around with her. He just exhaled, slow down a bit. Sorry. I was distracted just now. Then you got fixed up by someone? Moya teased, but she really did slow down the car. Luo Nan was unable to explain this. Luckily, Moya didn't get to the bottom of things. She just changed the topic. Roy 1, I've fought for you to stay right under my eyes. As for the school, you deal with it yourself. Huh? But you're talking about, Emoya lightly curled her lips, there are tens of thousands of outstanding alumni of Acumen School. How could they look up to a lowly singer like me? 2 days ago, I was able to ask a friend to help me out, but that friend recently ran off to the wilderness to do scientific research. If I were to ask someone else, my relationship wouldn't be that strong. I'd lose face if things went wrong. Luo Nan had practically never seen Emoya display such a weak appearance. He couldn't react for a time. He finally replied with great difficulty, "Then what are you doing? Don't you have a bunch of scoundrel friends at Acumen School? Also, you can even order around the deputy director of the SCA. Those school directors of Acumen School don't count for much. Am I right, Mr. Luo?" "Okay. Actually, I just received a call from a certain manager. There's a last-minute appointment tomorrow. A group operation. We have to leave in the morning. It's useless to ask for leave. If I go back on my word now, I won't have the face to see the Empress Dowager." Luo Nan heard the word appointment and suddenly thought of a few eyes that had already been burnt into charcoal. Even though the person who came up with the idea had died, the various bosses had backup copies of their dirty tricks. It wasn't impossible for them to appear. But what could he say to Emoya? He could only say a simple sentence: "Pay attention to safety." Yeah. You need to have a plan for your journey. He subconsciously sighed when he spoke to this point. However, the irritable mood in his heart dispersed quite a bit from this turbid breath. The current situation in Xia City was created by him. Naturally, he had to solve it. At this stage, his plan was still in its embryonic form. There was still a lot of work that needed to be done. The situation was becoming more and more complicated, more and more exhausting. Everyone else could get angry, but he couldn't. Why did it have to be like this? Wasn't it because of the flaws in his personal strength? If he really had Her Majesty Empress Wu. No, even if he had the strength of Jean Tong, it would be enough to suppress the overall situation. He researched the virtual brain interface and the external neuron for the sake of an opportunity to increase his strength. Looking at it this way, no matter how disgusting the virtual brain interface's changes were, as long as it was constantly changing, this opportunity would always exist. Why did he need to torment himself? Luo Nan's state of mind calmed down quite a bit as these thoughts circled around in his head. Emoya didn't speak again, and the car returned to silence. Luo Nan naturally shifted his mind back to the virtual brain interface. The pop-up text window was still there, icy cold. There were 2 options, and one of them was selected by default. Luo Nan suppressed the mood in his mind. He followed convention and simply chose the default option. The interface switched once more. It was also in this instant that the hateful ash-gray color suddenly brightened. A new interface appeared above the icon of the soul light seed. The surface flickered with a dense white light. The faint light was like strands of fresh air seeping in from a closed cellar. It made his heart, which had been stifled for a long time, feel quite a bit more relaxed. This light is pretty weird. Another pop-up window popped up just as Luo Nan had this thought. 5 consecutive shots. Luo Nan's heart was filled with profanity, but it had already surged to the back of his throat. If it weren't for the effect of his previous self-explanation, it was hard to avoid losing self-control. Fortunately, there weren't any options on the pop-up window this time. It only flickered for a few seconds before fading away. But Luo Nan also noticed that the pop-up window's panel was a bright and eye-piercing blood-red color. This had never happened before. It seemed to be some sort of warning. Then there were no more unforeseen changes. Luo Nan finally saw the interface of the virtual brain, which could be recognized and read. It didn't seem like anything new. The current interface gave Luo Nan a rather subtle feeling. He saw a simplified portrait of a human, broken down into several regional modules. This included the head, the torso, the limbs, and several other parts. Why did he go through so much trouble to describe it? This was simply the equipment bar of a game. Moreover, there were a few phantoms that resembled armor shells on the surface. When pieced together, it looked like the structure of some sort of exoskeleton equipment. In the game 10 Days in the Wilderness, the three categories of human heroes, Deep Blue, and Fantasy, all possessed this sort of UI interface. There was practically no difference. Luo Nan and Shui Lei often needed to use the Hero's Throne simulator of Frost River reality when they practiced extremely destructive Sansho techniques. Luo Nan was quite familiar with this. This toy couldn't possibly be a gaming device. Ha 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 ha. This isn't funny at all. Luo Nan really wanted to tear the external neuron apart and take a look. He wanted to figure out where all these twists and turns came from. And the main point was this: after analyzing Jin Tong's spiritual seed, an equipment bar like this appeared. No, the virtual brain interface. What sort of realistic meaning did this correspond to? Luo Nan pondered as he focused his consciousness on the chest area of the equipment bar. A subsidiary interface appeared without any sluggishness. An even more detailed equipment diagram appeared on top of it. Moreover, it was presented in the form of an assembly diagram. There were even drawings of parts dismantling inside. It looked extremely complex and professional. There's no need to plagiarize to this extent, right? Don't tell me I need to grind for parts next. A similar interface existed in the game 10 Days in the Wilderness. Its goal was to make players risk their lives to grind for parts and then upgrade their equipment. This interface of the external neuron. Oh, speaking of which, when was 10 Days in the Wilderness released to the market? Luo Nan quickly went online to search. The result he obtained was January 2094, which was 2 years ago. He searched further and found that the game was only established in the year 2092. By that time, the external neuron had already sat quietly in the flexible screen for an entire year. Where did the so-called plagiarism come from? Chapter 543. That's right, he could flip the page. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the assembly diagram interface. In the game, it was pretty much everything. But in the Virtual Brain app, it was just a portion of the assembly diagram. There were many, many more to come. Luo Nan flipped through it roughly, relying on his mechanical knowledge and game experience. He guessed that it included at least 4 or 5 basic modules, such as energy, life support, armor, perception, and so on. If he were to count the accessories, mounts, and so on, then there were thousands of components involved. Moreover, each component could have a separate interface. Different structural angles could be adjusted, and it could also present a 3-dimensional view, a cross-sectional view, and other flat drawing effects. If his consciousness deliberately tapped, it could even display even more detailed explanatory text. Of course, Luo Nan couldn't understand it. No game would be so stingy with details to this extent. This proved that this wasn't a game. It was a blueprint. An extremely complete design blueprint. Based on Luo Nan's shallow knowledge, he could rely on the level of detail and the information of these blueprints. If he had a processing plant, or even a 3D printer, and enough raw materials, then perhaps he would be able to quickly produce, assemble, and use it. Simply amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Why did the external neuron produce such a result when it analyzed Jin Tong's spiritual seed? Could it be that this exoskeleton was tailored for Jin Tong? But he needed to come back to life first. And wasn't this body a bit small? He didn't understand the size labels, but this kind of interface that was directly presented on the consciousness level possessed a bit of intuition. Luo Nan's consciousness was immersed within, and he was able to have an intuitive concept of size. It was as if he himself was immersed within, wearing a set of armor that was unpredictable. He could sense whether it was suitable or not. His feeling was, Jin Tong's physique isn't too suitable. It fits quite well on me, but it can't be for me, for me. Luo Nan's heart thumped loudly. He suddenly thought of Jack at this moment. As for why his thoughts had such a large leap, it was really due to the external neuron pulling him in. He still remembered that fellow, Jack, had used a dynamo core to transform from an altered human into a burner. Later on, even when he was in a half-crippled state, he could still control the Deep Blue Walker exoskeleton without any hindrance. What did this mean? Did it mean that Jack was awesome? Wrong. This meant that the external neuron, which essentially belonged to the dynamo core, should be compatible with the Deep Blue Walker system. In the primitive interface of the virtual brain, there was an option of exoskeleton. Elements such as the Wraith Rune and the Bloody Soul Temple, which had nothing to do with each other, were all classified under this category. Luo Nan's heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. The external neuron's design had been deduced to this step. Wasn't it clear that they wanted to create an exoskeleton for the external neuron, for Luo Nan himself? Perhaps it was a special version of the Deep Blue Walker? That sounds good. But the problem was that he had no idea how to get started. Did he really have to follow this set of virtual blueprints, find a 3D printer, and build an exoskeleton from scratch? I was just thinking of playing just now. Before he could finish his thought, the external neuron in his brain suddenly emitted electricity. This light burst forth suddenly, and it directly interfered with the nerves of Luo Nan's brain in a very rare manner. Luo Nan's eyelids twitched. He was worried that something bad would happen, so his mind temporarily jumped out of the equipment interface to carefully observe the direction of the electricity. Luckily, the operation method of the electricity was quite reliable. It was the coupling method he was most familiar with and most suitable for him. It took a certain power of the external neuron and applied it to a portion of the neuron region that processed visual information, as well as a deeper layer of mental senses. As for what it was used for, Luo Nan blinked his eyes. There weren't too many changes in his field of vision, but on the mental plane, there were inexplicably many white dots flickering within the scene of the Soul Cape that covered Xia City. He subconsciously chose a dot and focused his mind, but what he saw were several fully armed soldiers. Looking at the insignia, they should be military elites that were temporarily dispatched into Xia City due to the state of emergency. They all wore the military standard Eagle-Shot light exoskeleton armor. Right now they were carrying out patrol missions in the vicinity of the city center. Right now Luo Nan was using his mental senses, but he still subconsciously blinked his eyes once more. His attention was completely absorbed by the white light that floated on the standard Eagle-Shot exoskeleton armor. The white light was concentrated on the waists of the Eagle-Shot exoskeletons. If one were to carefully discern it, they should be armor. No, they were individual life support modules hidden behind the armor. All the exoskeletons were like this without exception. Clearly, the external neuron was very interested in this module. Luo Nan memorized this module in his heart and shifted his senses. This time, he locked onto a military factory located in the outskirts of the city. There was an unending stream of production and assembly of various military components inside. He discovered another type of metal component here. He couldn't name it, but the white light piled up from similar products nearly dazzled Luo Nan's eyes. Without a doubt, this was the result of the electricity of the external neuron. It seemed to coat Luo Nan's sensory system with a layer of film, forming some sort of filter effect. Luo Nan used this to mark a few objects. Even if he used his toes to think, he would be able to guess that these objects were related to the assembly interface that Luo Nan had just discovered. This was indeed the case. When Luo Nan's consciousness returned to the assembly interface, two component interfaces popped up on their own. Their external appearances were basically similar to the modules and components that he had just discovered. Did he really have to go kill monsters and grind for components? If he gathered over 10,000 components, wouldn't he be able to summon the exoskeleton godly equipment? Luo Nan felt that he had inexplicably entered an absurd reality game. It was hard for him not to think. Why did the interface elements of the external neuron have such a high degree of similarity to the game 10 Days in the Wilderness? Whether it was 10 Days in the Wilderness or Frost River reality, they both had the shadows of the Star Alliance Committee, the military, and Quantum Corporation. What did this mean? That person. Was his father related to all of this? Luo Nan pulled out his notebook and solemnly noted it down. He would go back and collect detailed information on the 10 Days in the Wilderness game. Perhaps this would be an extremely important clue. Of course, the most important and most direct clue was still within his brain. In any case, the assembly interface of the virtual brain app had formed a connection with concrete objects in the real world through the use of the external neuron. It formed a correspondence, and it created a demand. Luo Nan's thoughts drew closer to the problem of reality. It must be said that the corresponding target of the assembly interface gave him a problem that was neither too big nor too small. It must be known that Luo Nan's mental senses, including the interference scene of his soul cloak, were the most sensitive to living beings. He could naturally control them into the living starry sky, saving him a lot of effort. But these components were all inanimate objects. It was not impossible to pay attention to them, but he needed to spare some extra effort. It was a bit strenuous for him to do so in his current state. He had roughly swept through 2 groups just now and he already felt tired. There were still tens of thousands of components left. Luo Nan reached out to pinch his eyebrows. It looked like increasing the dosage of the drug could not be delayed any longer. He immediately sent a message to Octopus. Octopus responded instantly. Octopus sent a sluggish emoji. Perhaps Octopus felt that it was not serious enough, so he enlarged the font in red and sent it over. Are you crazy? How many days has it been? Luo Nan responded, the main thing is that the effects are average, and the energy consumption is quite large. Octopus was very annoyed. Boss Luo. Boss Luo. You are an expert in nerve drugs. Can you not say such childish words? Just based on the amount of drug you injected last time, a normal person would have died 100 times over. It would take at least a week for the negative reaction to be eliminated. If you increase the dosage now, do you think that neurons are crops that can grow crazily just by applying a bit of fertilizer? But if I don't replenish it in time, it will be useless when the inhibition effect comes out. If it's useless, then it's useless. What's more important than my life? Then I'll sleep for 6 or 7 days? Are you sure I won't sleep all the way to the Yellow Springs by then? Or maybe I'll wait to collect the corpses of my family, relatives, and friends? I want to ask. In the end, Octopus didn't give Luo Nan a definite reply. He just said that he had to report it to his superiors and that he could only reply tomorrow morning. Luo Nan estimated that the effects of the drug would be able to last until noon tomorrow, so he didn't force Octopus. I'll also mention it to Sister Yueyin. If she can't find Her Majesty Empress Wu or even President Ouyang. But bro Octopus, you'll need to concoct the relevant drug right now. Octopus replied hatefully, are you sure you can return it? Then he logged off and went to find someone. Luo Nan laughed and let out a breath. He went to study the assembly interface. But at this time, he suddenly discovered that there was a corresponding white light of a spare part not too far away from him. It was following him from beginning to end, practically in sync. He was almost home. Oh. Luo Nan's mental senses swept over. The carrier of the white light was actually the off-road vehicle that God drove. To be precise, it was a certain metal suitcase in the trunk of the car. Huh? Isn't that God's portable deep blue walker equipment? From the effects of the special filter, a considerable portion of its structure was suffused with white light. Hiss. Could this be directly used? They were both exoskeletons. How could the difference be so great? Could it be due to the archetype format? Luo Nan's mind shook, but he became absent-minded in the blink of an eye. How could the overlap rate be so high? What if? Luo Nan had already reached home while worrying about his gains and losses. He didn't say a single word as he returned to his room. He pondered for a moment, but in the end, he still gave He Yueyin a call. He first mentioned the matter of adding the dosage of the drug, but he didn't say too much about it. He didn't wait for He Yueyin's confirmation before he impatiently said, Sister Yueyin, I need a deep blue walker. I'm talking about the equipment. That's right. A complete exoskeleton armor. He Yueyin didn't ask Luo Nan what he wanted. She muttered to herself for a moment before responding, I really do hold a few quotas, but equipment of this level can only be purchased in the name of the society. This requires the approval of the Finance Committee. Luo Nan immediately understood. You want to find Her Majesty Empress Wu? You need a reasonable reason. He Yueyin sent over a spreadsheet as she spoke. Aside from the basic information, she also needed to fill in the reason for the application. Luo Nan looked at the specific instructions. This was simply more complicated than a feasibility study report or an application for funding. However, Luo Nan didn't think too much about the twists and turns. He was about to vomit from the torture of the virtual brain app. Therefore, he didn't even think about it. He just filled in the application form. As for the reason, it was settled in 2 words: prepare for class. Chapter 544. It had been snowing and raining in Xia City for nearly a week now. The ground and all sorts of buildings seemed to be permeated by the moisture. Many people complained that their entire bodies were rusty after a night's sleep. Their joints creaked and groaned. It was useless even if they turned the heating system to the max. There were even people petitioning on the government's website. They hoped that Xia City would use interference methods to disperse the rain and clouds so that the citizens could enjoy the warmth of the winter sun for a few days. On the Observing Faces show, the beautiful host used the tone of a script to chat with Phantom I Che-e. They talked about the weather and made it one of the topics of their conversation. Don't blame her for being a vase. Lord Ghost, I loved this. The eyes of this old and unruly extraordinary were always so lively. They wandered back and forth on the beautiful host's body. Oh my God. Miss Shan must be working hard to make this show in this damned weather. The beautiful host subconsciously drew her legs together. Her face revealed the professional smile that she was most adept at. It's all right. The sea is calm and tranquil. But it really feels different when I get ashore. Actually, this was a blatant lie. Ever since the luxurious cruise ship rented by the show arrived at the outer seas of Xia City, the beautiful host had been on the ship the entire time. She hadn't left even half a step. The other person who did this was Ghost I Che-e by her side. It was these two who spoke frankly and with assurance about the freezing rain in Xia City. The beautiful host began to enter the main topic. I've heard quite a few people say that the freezing rain in Xia City may be the result of some interference. After all, in an environment of -20 degrees, it is very difficult for a heavy snow to suddenly turn into continuous rain. What do you think about this? What opinion can I have? Currently, the Xia City branch has issued a denial order according to the emergency regulations. Ouyang and the martial monarch have endorsed this order. As a member of the society, I don't have permission. I don't have interview rights like you media, so I can only obediently stay in the outer seas. The rain in the outer seas has stopped for the past 2 days. The pitiful adaptability of the beautiful host was completely inadequate to deal with Ghost Eye's teasing. She was a bit stupefied for a moment. Fortunately, Ghost Eye beamed as he picked up the flexible screen next to him. However, there are quite a few comments on this matter on the internet. I like this one more. Moisture seems to be diffusing between the heavens and the earth, but in fact, it has already deviated from the laws of nature. It seems illusory yet real, unable to circulate. The beautiful host hurriedly followed. You mean, this freezing rain is man-made? How could I say that? I just read one line and felt that its syntax was quite neat. After that, Ghost Eye teased the beautiful host while saying some vague words. The topic of conversation shifted from the freezing rain weather to the high number of deaths and injuries in Xia City. These were clearly sensitive topics, but he was able to use glib words to bypass the most important points. He never revealed his true position. To put it simply, I have a lot of money, and I will never do anything that offends people. No wonder he chose Dan E, a pretty face. If it were someone as eloquent as Li Baizhou, Ghost Eye might not have come. Octopus pointed at the program while choosing the medicine. But most of the time, he was more interested in the appearance and figure of the beautiful host. According to him, in this kind of program where the content depends entirely on the guests, a vase is really more suitable. It must be said that Octopus was a very talkative person, but he was especially talkative today. He was even a bit talkative. It was most likely because he had injected the medicine again, giving him quite a bit of pressure. Luo Nan leaned back on the recliner and continued to adjust his breathing. A rack was set up on one side of the recliner. A complete set of monitoring equipment was placed there, and the corresponding sensors were connected one after another. Octopus was probably afraid that Luo Nan would be bored, so he opened the video of last night's face reading program. But Luo Nan didn't respond. Most of it was due to his lack of energy. It was 10 in the morning, and the school classes had yet to end. But medicine waits for no man. It was hard for Luo Nan to persevere. He needed to replenish his medicine immediately. For this reason, Octopus escorted the relevant equipment and medicine from the east of the city to the west of the city. The reward was 0. 5 honor points, which was 500,000 according to the market price. It was not an exaggeration to call this service a robbery. However, the one who set the price was the finance committee. If there were any doubts, they could appeal to Her Majesty Empress Wu. Besides, compared to the price of a set of deep blue walker equipment, this amount of money was nothing. Though Octopus was watching the program, most of his energy was placed on the monitoring data. He concocted the medicine while shaking his head. Don't blame me for being long-winded. This sort of continuous stimulation may not be fatal with your cultivation, but no one can tell the repercussions. Especially since you're on the mental side. Your brain is very precious. Since you're already here, what's the point of saying all this nonsense? Cat Eyes lay on the sofa, watching the program. The dancer's figure was actually a cut above that of the vase host. Unfortunately, Octopus didn't have the guts to watch. Cat Eyes' cultivation and temper had both risen recently, and she was moody. He was afraid of losing face by provoking her. Luckily, Cat Eyes was in a good mood right now. Hey, I'm passing by. Don't miss it. Roche Yoga First Stage, Jungle Shooting Bird Stance. It's very precious first-hand information. How about you give it to me? The price is negotiable. As Cat Eyes spoke, she minded her own business and switched the content of the projection in front of her. The display showed Luo Nan standing on one foot, twisting his neck and breaking his arms in a strange pose. The drizzling rain had drenched his hair, and even beads of ice had formed on it. It was both funny and embarrassing. This was the result of Cat Eyes' personal photography this morning. Back then, Luo Nan had taken a break from his busy schedule. After he arrived at school, he went to the northern shore jungle. He followed Gym Master Xiu's principle of combining the inside and the outside. He posed in nature in an attempt to probe the mysteries behind his grandfather and father's comical poses. Xue Lei wasn't on guard against Cat Eyes, and he leaked the relevant words. Then, it spread throughout his circle of friends. Octopus was still picking and choosing. You've already posted these in the group. Is there anything more explosive? Cat Eyes gave him a sidelong glance. How about you drug him and let him run around naked outside for a bit? We'll record it when we get back. We'll split the profits 50-50. The two of them glanced at Luo Nan as they spoke. However, they didn't even roll their eyes at him, let alone get an echo. Right now, Luo Nan's hand was gently twirling a soft syringe. His eyes were fixed on the syringe. It was as if he wanted to unearth a forbidden secret technique to kill all the rebels within and outside of Xia City. He also seemed to be dispirited and helpless. His mind was faintly discernible, and his soul was wandering beyond the heavens. The two glanced at each other. At the same time, in a private chat channel on the Psychic Wave Network, information was displayed and refreshed layer by layer. See? I told you it was necessary. Is there a need to throw his life away? How could it be that serious? After all, we're doing this for his own good. Do you think we should make a move? I'm just a small fry. Yesterday I was a firefighter. Today I'm a bodyguard. Tomorrow I might even have to warm the bed. What qualifications do I have to speak? What's wrong with your mind? Speaking of which, do you really think you can make him sleep with you warming the bed? If you can do it, then don't look for me. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and get the person in charge. Sometimes this boss is simple and foolish, but sometimes he's as shrewd as a monkey. If you hesitate for too long and he sees through your flaws, then you're done for. Two simple words responded to Cat Eye's long-winded speech. Inject. On the plane of reality, Cat Eyes gave Octopus a look. Her meaning was, "Oh, the vice president in charge has spoken." Octopus shrugged. He didn't hesitate any longer. He injected the prepared drug into Luo Nan. In the end, Luo Nan wasn't an omniscient god. He was completely unaware of the undercurrents operating on the psychic wave network. His mind hadn't been idle since 100 hours ago, especially from yesterday afternoon until now. The trend of his activity was probably mysterious posture. Virtual exoskeleton assembly interface. Mysterious posture. Virtual exoskeleton assembly interface. This cycle went on without end. Occasionally, he would insert some adjustments to the situation in Xia City and the altar's framework. His mind was a bit restless and anxious due to the suppression effect of his cerebral cortex for the past 2 hours. He waited for the ice-cold drug to be injected into his blood vessels and take effect. Finally, he could relax his mind a bit. Some thoughts and emotions were like floating clouds that lingered in his mind. Luo Nan finally discovered that he was filled with envy and jealousy towards the archetype format and its accompanying deep blue walkers. He wasn't jealous of the combat strength of the deep blue walkers. He was jealous of the weapon platform behind it. It was a research system composed of the world's top scientific research power, the most top-notch talents, and the most extravagant resources. It was precisely because of this system that the archetype format was able to continuously develop, improve, and apply. How fortunate. And right now, the analysis process of the external neuron was presenting him with another system. Even though only a small part of the iceberg had been exposed, Luo Nan was able to get a glimpse of its grand, precise, and complete overall scale from the appallingly detailed assembly interface and the thousands upon thousands of various blueprints. Most importantly, it was impossible for it to correspond to the archetype format. It was certainly the genuine formatting theory. At least this was the case from what Luo Nan could see. Inconceivable. Luo Nan's mind hadn't stopped for even a moment since last night. Excitement, stimulation, and bewilderment formed a never-ending whirlpool of thoughts. How did this system come to be? Where did it come from? Was it the results of his grandfather's research back in the day? Or was there a deeper source? That fellow. His father. The reason why he sent the external neuron back was because it hid such an enormous secret? How did he discover it? How did he use it back in the day? Could the natural mode of words be overcome? Or was there a way around it? Could he obtain answers from the analysis and assembly process when faced with all sorts of puzzlement? Luo Nan didn't know, but he had already done it. Right now, he was twirling the soft needle tube. He was considering the problem of the muscle structure within the exoskeleton system. Chapter 545. After an entire night of research and combining with the mainstream structure of today's exoskeleton weapon platform, Luo Nan divided the virtual brain exoskeleton, which was still in the blueprint stage, into 7 modules. They were power, inner armor, outer armor, close combat, long range, support, and mounting. Below each module were several hundred to over 1,000 assembled spare parts. Every spare part had a detailed blueprint and a large amount of text explanation. Perhaps it even included the requirements for crafting. Luo Nan was unable to understand the most valuable part of the content due to the existence of the natural chasm of words. But through intuition, he could more or less experience the size and shape of the parts and understand the difference in size. And the vast majority of these parts could be found in Xia City and the surrounding areas covered by the Soul Cloak. Luo Nan spent most of last night searching for the corresponding material. He felt like he was playing a game of chain link. Every time he succeeded, a sense of accomplishment would spontaneously arise. There was no doubt that this gave him the greatest encouragement. It was as if this virtual brain exoskeleton could be completely assembled in the next second and he could wear it on his body. Even though it was illusory, there was always hope. But this excitement suddenly crashed into the muscle structure, which was the inner armor module, and it suddenly shattered into pieces. The inner armor module of the virtual brain exoskeleton was more like a close-fitting protective suit from Luo Nan's perspective. It felt like a layer of artificial muscles when worn on the body. It could expand and contract according to a certain range, hence the name. The main structure of this protective suit was not made of metal. Instead, it was woven from some macromolecular material and filled with some kind of liquid. The reason why he was able to recognize it was because of the existence of molecular formula-like symbols within the large section of text that he could not understand. The symbols directly displayed the short-range and long-range structural fragments of the macromolecular material. But there was still the problem of the natural chasm of words. Even if there was a molecular formula and a structural diagram, the manufacturing process was far beyond the heavens. It was hard to grasp. Unless there really was an almighty being that could directly control microscopic particles and forcefully produce it according to the structural diagram. But that was all. What truly troubled Luo Nan was that he could not find the real counterpart of this protective suit. At the very least, it did not exist within the area covered by the soul cloak. This was quite troublesome. With Luo Nan's shallow knowledge, he was unable to calculate the effect of the exoskeleton's lack of inner armor on the overall performance of the exoskeleton. Mulling over it right now was nothing more than adding to his worries. His rationality required him to suppress such thoughts. He had also tried using the coordination art to reduce the priority in this aspect. However, under the dual stimulation of drugs and emotions, the highly excited cerebral cortex was simply too hard to control. A lot of plausible molecular formulas and hieroglyphs that he did not quite understand shuttled back and forth in his brain. His mental power, which was already insufficient in the first place, occupied a considerable amount of space. I still need to hurry up and get to the practical level, Luo Nan muttered to himself. He completely ignored the existence of octopus and cat eyes nearby. The two who were ignored also quickly refreshed their messages in the dedicated channel. Is it okay to talk to yourself like this? He should be fine. Should. There are indeed some hallucinogens in it. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult to hide it from him. The dosage was also discussed by a bunch of people in the group. It's quite accurate. Is he trying to avoid responsibility? In any case, I don't see the slightest inclination to sleep. He'll definitely be able to sense it. Do you believe that he'll pull the plug immediately and take all of us at the same time? Are you afraid of the dripping sword HMG? The two entered into crosstalk mode. They actually hoped that the mastermind of this matter, the vice president, would hurry up and take responsibility. The problem was that there was no reply after the vice president issued the command. While they were looking at each other in dismay, Gauda pulled a suitcase that was half the height of a person and walked out of the elevator. Luo Nan's gaze immediately moved away from the soft syringe and cast over there. Mr. Luo, an urgent message from the military. Luo Nan took a deep breath and sat up straight. A deep blue walker? Yes, an engineering prototype. Sister Yuan's efficiency is truly super high. Luo Nan praised in anger. Looking at her appearance, if it weren't for the syringe and sensor inserted into his body, he would have already gotten up to open the suitcase and research it. To the side, Cat Eyes stared at Octopus. Octopus glanced at Cat Eyes. Their thoughts were all subtle, and this was directly reflected in the dedicated channel. Vice President this isn't right, right? You're efficient at getting favorable impressions. We'll do things that offend people. It's not too good to bring it over right now. Isn't this giving him a heart shot? Yuan finally spoke to explain. The finance committee and the military's efficiency has exceeded expectations. Can you control the scene a bit? No matter what sort of undercurrents were surging in private, the metal suitcase containing the deep blue walker had already arrived before Luo Nan. Luo Nan didn't even need to open it. He could see the special white light within through his mental senses. Luo Nan extended his hand and attempted to open the suitcase. To the side, Octopus gave a warning. Needles. Be careful of needles. Can't you research it after the infusion? You're using your brain too much right now. Do you want to become mentally ill? I'm just looking. Brother Gao, can you open it a bit? Luo Nan wasn't a stubborn person, but under the influence of the suitcase full of white light, his current self-control was close to zero. Gao hesitated for a moment, but he still walked forward under the sharp gazes of Octopus and Cat Eyes. He placed the metal suitcase flat according to the operation requirements. Then he opened the corresponding mechanism according to the unlock code sent by the military. The metal suitcase slowly opened amidst the clear and circular electromagnetic sound. At the same time, the suitcase separated. It was like an open folding chair under the support of a special metal frame. All sorts of accessory modules were embedded in the surrounding. Under the illumination of the lighting, a smooth and clean blue and white color like porcelain appeared. According to the operating procedures, the user just needed to sit on the chair and this exoskeleton armor would automatically assemble and assemble. The core installation would be worn for 15 seconds, and the entire process would take approximately 45 seconds. Gauda explained a step further. There's still room for adjustment when the armor is worn. However, this is an engineering prototype. It hasn't been activated yet. Luo Nan stared at the metal folding chair in front of him. He asked with interest, I heard that the activation condition is the format of fire. Is this true? According to the information, the activated deep blue walker would undergo continuous fine adjustments according to the user's specific circumstances. For example, the overly dazzling outer coating would become much more restrained under the burning of the format of fire. Its built-in artificial intelligence chip could support deep neural network learning to coordinate with synchronization, guidance, and other functions. When necessary, such as when the user was seriously injured or unconscious, it could also perform some emergency operations, such as evacuation, concealment, and so on. Gauda responded, to be precise, starting from the third generation, all deep blue walkers must undergo 2 confirmations before they can be activated. That is, DNA and the format of fire. This covers 3 types of authority, identity, qualifications, and control characteristics. However, it is said that the latest generation of research and development is to integrate all authority into the dynamo core, including artificial intelligence. The equipment can only be used for auxiliary calculations. The dynamo core, huh? Luo Nan looked pensive. As the cooperation between the military and the society grew closer day by day, a considerable amount of information was made available to the society. The dynamo core was no longer a secret. According to the military's information, the dynamo core was the center of energy control and conversion. It could effectively increase the might of the format of fire and strengthen the control power of the deep blue walkers. The vast majority of burners had received the relevant implantation. The problem was that the implanted dynamo core of a burner couldn't be like the external neuron. It could freely change and flow between the virtual and the real. Furthermore, it hid a precise and complete system like the virtual brain app. There was a clear generation difference between the two. Then, this generation difference corresponded to concrete equipment. What kind of scene would it be? Luo Nan subconsciously ground his teeth to eliminate the numb feeling in his mouth. It was as if electricity had passed through him. Under the stimulation of drugs, the neurons in various places would be activated to show the ups and downs of his mood. It wasn't just his mood. Luo Nan's train of thought was a bit erratic. It was a bit hard to grasp. Now, he had a special feeling about the ghastly white light in filter vision. This light, which only he could see, radiated from the exoskeleton armor in front of him. It seemed to have a penetrating sense of fragility. It made him suddenly have a strange thought. The first equipment interface that the virtual brain app presented was of a relatively high standard. A pop-up window appeared and switched to the current interface with a warning. Perhaps the material was a grade lower, causing some sort of weakening. The deep blue walkers were already the world's most cutting-edge individual weapon system. And it was of a low grade. Wouldn't it be easier to understand if an advanced civilization had descended on Earth? Luo Nan unconsciously grinned and laughed. He was inexplicably happy. All right, I'll put aside the completely clueless advanced civilization protective suit for now. Let's look at something a bit more practical. With God's help, he removed the exoskeleton right arm module from the metal box. He held it in his hand and pondered it carefully. According to the blueprints on the assembly interface, the modification process here seemed to be the simplest of all. The original arm module had 3 functions: palm, wrist, and forearm. But he only needed one function. I don't need this and that. How do I pull it off? Luo Nan wasn't just talking. He was about to make his move. It didn't feel bad to the touch. God subconsciously glanced at the 2 beside him. The higher-ups of the security team knew about Luo Nan's drug injection plan. They had made the corresponding arrangements. But no one had told him that Luo Nan would be like this after the injection. Was he drunk? Cat Eyes wouldn't take the blame. She stared at Octopus. Octopus had an innocent expression. Luckily, God could answer this question. It was a prototype that hadn't been debugged. All sorts of functions needed to be adjusted. It was just right for DIY. Dismantling, and dismantling was very normal. But dismantling wasn't the end of it. Structural adjustments needed to be made, and the wiring design needed to be changed as well. Luo Nan watched as God's emotions floated, but his mouth was still able to speak clearly and logically. God, a non-professional, was a bit stupefied when he listed 2 or 3 requests. He subconsciously asked, should we transfer an engineer over? The group of people looked at each other in dismay when a call was made to the Hexier. Luo Nan saw it and clapped his hands in laughter. Chapter 546. 10 minutes later, Worker Zhai arrived at Gear. Originally, he and Luo Nan had discussed it over. Luo Nan would bring the materials for the exchange at night for Luo Nan's reference. He would accompany Luo Nan to stay up late and work overtime to rush out the lesson plans for the lecture the day after tomorrow. However, Luo Nan skipped class in the morning. The 2 contacted each other once during this time, and they decided to move the time forward. The sooner they finished, the sooner their hearts would calm down. Exchanging materials was not a problem for Worker Zhai. As an engineer, recording experiments was second nature to him. He definitely had enough data and materials. Plus, communication materials focused on real experience and feelings, so there was no need for too much embellishment. After yesterday's dinner, with the help of the alcohol, he finished it in a few hours. However, when Worker Zhai entered, he saw another fellow who was inexplicably excited. The professionals are here. Luo Nan swayed as he stood up from the recliner. He didn't wait for Worker Zhai to come close before he shouted, Worker Zhai, there's something I want to consult you about. Worker Zhai faintly felt that Luo Nan was a bit odd. He just responded subconsciously when he was pulled over. Worker Zhai listened to Luo Nan mumble about the requirements for modifying the ARM module. Fortunately, Worker Zhai lived up to his reputation as a professional. He normally had a certain amount of research on exoskeleton technology. He listened to Luo Nan's request and inspected the actual object a few times. Then he said, this is the structure of a pulse weapon. All you need to consider is the path of pulse wave deformation. There's also the field emission structure. Don't we have another one? How to guarantee the power output? What about the isolation barrier? Worker Zhai's doubts were professional. Be it the former military officer or the 2 members of society, none of them knew how to respond. But Luo Nan knew that he had found the right person. He said in delight, you don't need to worry about that. I want this style. Will it be troublesome to modify it? How long will it take? Although Worker Zhai had a good temper, he was a very strict person. He frowned slightly when he heard what was said and was about to ask again when he saw Cat Eyes and Octopus giving him meaningful looks. God's expression was also very strange. At this time, Worker Zhai finally confirmed that Luo Nan's state was a bit abnormal. At the very least, it was far too unrestrained. In the end, he was a mature person. He resisted the urge to ask too many questions. He just smiled at Luo Nan. If you have some handy tools on hand, it'll probably take half an hour. Luo Nan didn't speak. He just stared straight at God. The latter was slightly stifled, but he came to a realization in time. The deep blue walkers come with their own basic maintenance modules. The engineering machine is also equipped with a simple maintenance platform. Excellent. There are many things to do. Let's hurry up. A lot? Worker Zhai stared blankly once more. His gaze turned towards the folding chair in front of him. To an engineer like him, being able to directly use the deep blue walker was indeed a rare opportunity. But there were more than a dozen complicated modules in it. He couldn't possibly have to change all of them, right? Just based on Luo Nan's empty words. Also, didn't he come here to ponder over teaching plans? A minute later, Worker Zhai finally learned the ins and outs of Luo Nan's current state from the special channel. He was convinced by this young man who could make sleeping pills have a stimulant effect. In the dedicated channel, another conspirator appeared. So, the situation is out of control now? It's alright. At least his concentration is starting to slacken. Although I'm excited, my train of thought is jumping too much, and it's not consistent. There are more and more blank scenes, and I can barely be considered to have entered the state. Must you use this method? I had no choice but to do so. The data collected over the past 2 days isn't very optimistic. Ever since the first injection, he has been in a highly excited state for 60 consecutive hours. Moreover, the overuse of his brain is prominent. The metabolic protein content in his brain is seriously over the limit. He's simply in a state where his blood vessels could burst at any moment. Worker Zhai thought of the situation he saw last night. He really does look very tired, but he seems to be forcing himself to be excited. So he needs sleep to adjust. It doesn't need to be too long. 1 or 2 cycles should be enough. Worker Zhai recalled the relevant common sense. So it's just 3 hours? It'd be better if he could have a complete sleep cycle. Hey, look. His brain waves have entered the 5 Hz range. He successfully entered the first stage of light sleep. Cat Eyes shot a glance and sent a middle finger in the channel. Do you sleep with your eyes open and your eyeballs rolling? Octopus was paying attention to the monitoring equipment. He turned his head in astonishment when he heard Luo Nan's voice. He just so happened to make eye contact with Luo Nan's shifting pupils. He subconsciously laughed awkwardly. Is it okay? A lot. It's very messy. Luo Nan really did hear Octopus's words. He responded. The first thing he said was his direct feelings. Then he said more genuine emotions. I'm getting closer and closer. The surrounding group of people looked at each other in dismay, but Luo Nan grinned once more. He was suddenly able to understand why discoveries like the virtual brain app and the mysterious posture came one after another. They brought him more and more troubles and challenges. It was because he had reached a certain standard. He was like a baby who had just opened his eyes and saw a world of mottled colors. It was because he was getting closer and closer to the domain his grandfather, his father, and his mother had touched upon. He discovered more footprints that had not been annihilated by time. And it was because his growth speed was getting faster and faster. It was like he was running at high speed through a primitive jungle that no one had ever cultivated. The branches struck his face every moment, leaving behind one mark after another. He needed all of these elements. But there was too much. Too much. When it was suddenly laid out, there were countless details, countless interpretations, and countless ambiguities. Just like the past 2 days. Luo Nan's mind was originally filled with Rui Wen's 2000th part. It was the laying of the altar's frame. But the virtual brain app popped up. His grandfather and father's photo popped up. And now he forcefully filled in the exoskeleton modification, and don't forget that there was an extraordinary in the cloud world. There was a giant crocodile-like quantum corporation hidden amidst the surging flood of capital. Different missions and projects. Synchronized time processes. These were simply the natural enemies of the human brain. One of the fundamental keys of the planning technique was to capture even more information in an instant's time sequence, to obtain even more precise meaning. But how could completely different domains, vast and boundless ranges and levels be merged into one? How could a meaningful result be obtained? This was Luo Nan's last clear thought. Next, he entered a wondrous state of emptiness. Everything was laid out before his eyes, but this thing called meaning seemed to be slowly fading away. He looked at the external neuron. It flickered in the nothingness. The wraith sign gradually grew clear. Every puppet, believer, and the entire sealed system appeared one after another. Of course, there was the external world. The soul cloak attacked endlessly. It had already covered the surrounding area of Xia City. It was in the sea, it was in the wilderness. It unexpectedly reached its limit. Then it suddenly flashed back. The entire earth contracted, condensing into Luo Nan at the very center. Then it continued, but it turned into a sky full of stars. It was the starry sky of the virtual brain. It was resplendent and chaotic. Hold on. What did he see just now? Countless bright spots. A mottled and multicolored scenery. There were familiar people and monsters. There was intense light that lingered without dissipating. But what was light? What was scenery? What was a person? What was a monster? What in the world were those? Those inexplicable things. Those things, Luo Nan was dazed. He was in chaos. He was lost. He didn't struggle. He didn't feel fear. His originally excited brain regions entered a state of inhibition one by one. The synaptic connections between his neurons temporarily shut down. His powerful instincts, located at the lowest level of life, radiated a single signal. Rest. Rest. Sleep. Sleep. Luo Nan nearly fell asleep. Perhaps he did fall asleep. But the intense signal that came from his instincts, after completing its task, crossed a bit of boundary with imprecision. Inhibition and stimulation switched in an instant. A spark of inspiration flashed through Luo Nan's mind amidst the emptiness and chaos. His brain only had a few computational resources, and he was faced with a problem. Sleep. What was sleep? Just as the meaning was about to become clear, a change occurred. A new element was unearthed. How could I sleep? He didn't know the exact meaning, but there was an intense resistance from his instincts. It was a remnant imprint of obsession before his consciousness fell into complete chaos. The remnant and the germination collided together, and another fuzzy concept burst forth. I can't sleep. I have to move. I have to move. The distinction between the two concepts was still unclear, but the functions of each brain region were already slowly recovering amidst the turbulence. They followed the pattern before he became unconscious, spontaneously gathering information from the surroundings. But the power wasn't sufficient, and the range was limited. They could only linger within a narrow area. The dense and dazzling specks of light, the darkness that made it impossible to distinguish the direction, made Luo Nan instinctively move away from the most eye-catching area. He went to search for an even simpler element. And at this time, an extremely simple structure appeared in the upper right corner of the interface. There were a limited number of specks of light, and the lines between the specks of light were extremely simple, yet inexplicably familiar. The corresponding concept was derived from this. Yes, it was a person. A small person that seemed to be dancing and swinging its arms and legs. It was simple yet full of movement. Move, move. Crash. Luo Nan suddenly stood up, shocking everyone in the room. The sky was gradually turning dark, and the lighting in the room was dim. Over 6 hours had already passed by. Speaking of which, the sleep plan had basically achieved success. Octopus began to scatter flowers in the group in celebration, while Cat Eyes mocked and ridiculed him from the side. Worker Jai remained here all this time. After completing the modification of the arm module, he discussed the various principles and details of the Deep Blue Walkers with God. Chinikuan strenuously stared at Roy One, who was in the corner. He didn't know what was going on today, but the little girl wasn't as quiet as she had been 2 days ago. She flickered in and out of existence, appearing and disappearing like a phantom. She would often disappear in the blink of an eye, then return in the blink of an eye. It made one's nerves weak. Under such circumstances, Luo Nan stood up straight without any warning. This awakening. Not good. Cat Eyes leaped over the sofa with a flip. She borrowed the obstructed line of sight to leap outside. God and Chinikuan turned their heads at the same time. Worker Jai's hand trembled, and the front end of the heavy metal component touched the ground. There was also Roy One. She looked over with concentration. As for Octopus, he was right in front of the monitoring device. He was the closest, but he was shocked by Luo Nan. He was a step too slow. He saw that the two were within arm's reach, so he could only shout, "Listen to me explain." Huh? Luo Nan just walked right in front of Octopus's nose. He was completely indifferent to the people and the situation around him. He took 2 steps forward, and the sensors and whatnot were detached one after another. Octopus could only rejoice that the syringe had been pulled out earlier. In the next moment, his eyes went wide as he watched Luo Nan adopt the hilarious posture that Cat Eyes had shouted at him. Luo Nan raised his legs, bent his arms, and bent his waist. His head looked back, and there was the sound of breathing. Oh, he was muttering something. There were many syllables, but Octopus was unable to hear the concrete meaning because he was chanted and abbreviated. Instead, he felt the air buzz and vibrate, so much so that his lips and the skin of his face went a bit numb. Several seconds later, a new sound joined in. Walala. Walala. It was like the trembling of metal chains that encircled the surroundings. It was hard to tell where it ended. This bizarre scene caused Octopus to subconsciously try to move away from Luo Nan, but his body went inexplicably stiff. It was as if he was bound by an invisible force. His chest, abdomen, and limbs were constricted. Not to mention moving, even breathing began to feel difficult. Octopus was a bit flustered. Hey! What the hell is going on? In the blink of an eye, his shout was drowned out by the intense vibrating of the chains. Even he himself couldn't hear it. There was a moment when Octopus practically believed that this was the only sound left in the world. It was completely flooded by the invisible chains. They encircled and interweaved, gradually erasing all gaps. And Luo Nan's posture was changing before his eyes. He was spinning. His limbs followed the spinning momentum, rising and falling up and down, crisscrossing and falling. He was simply dancing gracefully and lightly. He was done for. Sleepwalking. Hysteria. The surrounding situation and emotions were meaningless to Luo Nan. In fact, everything he touched, everything he sensed, everything he did lacked a clear meaning. He wasn't sleeping. Why wasn't he sleeping? He moved. Why did he need to move? Those people, those scenes, those stimuli. They came one after another, lingering without dissipating. In the end, how should he evolve? In what direction should he go? The vibrating sounds of clattering interweaved and piled up layer by layer. They gradually transformed into a surging force that was ready to gush out. He wanted to justify himself. But he was separated by a piece of paper, a layer of fog. He was unable to discern clearly no matter how hard he tried. What should he do? What should he do? Luo Nan's will pervaded the world once more, stirring the curtain of Xia City's night. He searched for the answer that was already at the tip of his tongue, but it was hard to advance an inch further. The scene of Xia City and its surroundings unfolded and contracted over and over again. It went through a seemingly meaningless cycle. But every cycle caused his will to fall from a realm that people were unable to perceive. It was like dark clouds that pressed down on an entire city, giving birth to a hazy and restless power. This power was on the verge of surpassing the limits of the polar domain. It entered the abyss region and even the even shallower mental plane. More and more ability users discovered this trend. The electric waves and psychic waves that traveled inside and outside of Xia City became more complex and subtle. And at this very moment, in a certain sanatorium on the outskirts of the city, an old man suddenly sat up in fright. He gasped for breath, coughed, and muttered something intermittently. The warning lights flashed, and the special nurse rushed over. She wanted to inject the old man with a tranquilizer. This was a common practice. But who knew that the old man's thin and weak body, which had already been tortured to the limit by the hallucinations, would somehow burst forth with a powerful energy. He pushed aside the special nurse and faced the deep night and freezing rain outside the window. He spread his arms wide open and laughed loudly. All things are prepared for me. My heart is the universe. A hoarse voice tore out from his throat. It was like the rolling thunder of a rainy night. The tangible sound wave trapped the room, but the incorporeal vibration broke through all obstructions. It penetrated the boundary between the material and the mental. It resonated with the blood vessels dozens of kilometers away with a buzzing sound. The sound of thunder came stealthily, and lightning came startling. The flash of an instant penetrated through everything. It pierced through the piece of paper, dispersed the layer of fog, and revealed the answer that should have yet to come. Form, pronunciation, mood, charm. All sorts of elements converged into a concept, a meaning, yet it was also a concrete and minute word. Perhaps some details could be changed, but the core elements were firm and unchangeable. Chapter 547. Luo Nan's figure suddenly froze. He had returned to his normal standing posture. He just stared blankly ahead. It was as if there was an unmistakable image in front of him that attracted all of his attention. Phew. Octopus was finally able to breathe normally. The feeling of restraint on his entire body disappeared. Who in the world is the one having hysteria? Why do I feel like a ghost is pressing down on me? He had the heart to complain, but the entire room was filled with a different kind of suffocating atmosphere. Everyone looked at Luo Nan. Some looked in front of Luo Nan, but no one could understand what was in front of Luo Nan. Luo Nan was still moving. He extended his hand, his index finger slightly protruding forward. It was as if he wanted to draw something, but he hesitated. Octopus was currently the person closest to Luo Nan. There was an inexplicable pressure behind him. He turned to see Cat Eyes standing up from behind the sofa, so he tiptoed over. It seemed safer to have two people as companions. Bah! What kind of damned thought was this? Luo Nan really gave off a very strange feeling. Octopus would never forget the feeling of his breathing being locked. Speaking of which, wasn't there a problem with the intensity of Luo Nan's mental interference with matter? Was his knowledge outdated? Octopus could not help but grow an intense curiosity when he looked at Luo Nan's posture. His gaze swept over and he saw the surveillance equipment he brought. There was a projector attached to it. He had used it to watch a few programs before. He blinked and carefully moved over. He turned on the projector's drawing function, sprinkling a sheet of light. He adjusted it to the tip of Luo Nan's finger. This way, he could more or less figure out what Luo Nan was drawing. Octopus really admired his own train of thought. But a hand reached out from the side just as he was about to place the projector. With a click, the projector was turned off. The one who reached out was Cat Eyes. For some reason, her face was a bit pale. Her expression was solemn. Don't court death. Huh. Chinikuan was a bit more familiar with Octopus. He shook his head. Too sensitive. Octopus was a smart person. He understood in an instant when he heard this. He knew that he had done things poorly. In this dangerous time, any information related to Luo Nan's abilities should be kept as secret as possible to avoid being seized by people with ulterior motives. Even if they could all be trusted, a place like Gear was said to have already been infiltrated by various powers. There was no telling if there was an invisible camera hidden in some corner. Just now, Luo Nan had been injected with medicine, and now he had to record Luo Nan's marvelous state and the results. This was the work of a spy. Octopus raised his hand, indicating that he had lost his mind. It was also at this time that Luo Nan's finger finally determined the location of the pen. It began to wander and trace. There were no obvious directions or traces, so the others were completely unable to understand what Luo Nan was drawing. Cat eyes might be able to sense a little, but the details were just as Jim Master Shio had said, the most important thing was the details. Luo Nan went to dig out the details under a kind of marvelous awareness. The starry interface of the virtual brain app appeared in front of him. At the center of the outline of the virtual brain, countless stars were concentrated, forming a bright cluster of stars that looked like a silver core. At the edge of the outline of the virtual brain, a small matchstick man made of a few stars and their connections had just moved to this place. In fact, this matchstick man's original position was within the virtual brain. It was just that after the virtual brain app and the drawing software fused together, Luo Nan's format pyramid blended with it, and the starry scene of the self format mixed with it, changing its form. When Luo Nan discovered this, he relied on his memories to restore the matchstick man to its original state, placing it in a corner of the virtual brain's interface. He never imagined that this cautious action would become the key to breaking free from his muddled state. He never imagined that the outline of this matchstick man would actually match the mysterious posture of his grandfather and father in the photo. Of course, the most important thing was that it clearly indicated a certain form and a certain meaning when combined with the photo. If this was the Luo Nan of the past, he might have been suspicious of the logic behind this similarity. But now, under the impact of surging inspiration, he was like a radical painter who had entered a state of mind. His fingertips drew what he thought in his heart. He reached forward with his finger when he had finished accumulating. He tapped a point amidst the hazy and dense stars within the virtual brain's outline. The first time he put his pen to the brush was not at the edge of the cluster of stars. Instead, it was at a region slightly above it. Although the cluster of stars was a combination of the self-format and the matchstick man, the stars were densely packed, and the positions of the points were disorderly. It was extremely easy to get lost within. The matchstick man was too simple, and the symbolism of the photo was too much. Only by combining the three and relying on that instant of understanding could he draw out the outline of the network and draw it invisibly, revealing the true meaning to the greatest degree. Luo Nan's fingertips followed the flow and connected the lines between the stars. It was as if he was drawing a complex constellation diagram. He treated this process as a sketch, but the difficulty was much greater. Not only did he have to draw the picture in his mind, he also had to ensure that the lines traveled back and forth between the points of the stars. This was the difficulty and the limitation, but at the same time, it was a true detail given to him by the existing interface. Luo Nan was still in that marvelous state right now. His train of thought was clear, and inspiration flashed through him without end. When the first brush fell, it was impossible to stop. The outline was already faintly taking shape in less than 3 to 5 seconds. As time passed, the star atlas gradually materialized. It manifested into a small dancing person that was kicking and waving its arms. It was like the matchstick man from before the virtual brain, but it was even more detailed. It was like the laughable appearance of his two closest relatives in the photo, but it was even more abstract. As for the resplendent cluster of stars, it was divided into even clearer layers by these connecting lines. At the center was the image of a dancing person. The shoulders, hands, feet, chest, back, head, and soles of the feet were constrained into 8 indistinct structures. They were like 8 mysterious runes that revolved around the surroundings. Of course, at the center of all of this was the dancing figure. It was the most complete and most mysterious one. When the layers were drawn and the outline was complete, the feeling of sudden enlightenment wasn't completely consumed by the brush. Instead, it was like a great tide under the full moon. The waves behind pushed against the waves in front, piling up layer by layer. An inconceivable power swelled out from this diagram. Luo Nan was shocked to realize that this diagram, the energy contained within it, was within his body. It flooded his limbs and bones. It spread to the tips of his hair and his fingertips. It was omnipresent and omnipresent. Because of this, Luo Nan could practically view it as overlapping with him. From top to bottom, from inside to outside, and it wasn't restricted by the fleshly body. The ability to circulate and transform to the extreme was able to interpret its form, syllables, emotions, and charm to its heart's content. And Luo Nan already knew that this was the word I. It was different from any other language in the world. Its three-dimensional structure was impossible to write on paper, and its syllables were not something one would normally pronounce. It even involved the mental state and all sorts of information changes on the mental plane. It was inconceivably complex. But when its meaning was simplified to the extreme, when it was inclusive to the extreme, it was still the word I. The word I stood there. Disregarding its form and sound for the time being, just its penetrating and clear meaning was able to penetrate from beginning to end. It pushed Luo Nan to continue to delve into all sorts of details, all the way until the impulse of sudden enlightenment was completely exhausted. But the driving force within Luo Nan's mind remained strong even when the outline was clear and the complicated structural lines within neared its end. It was because this word, this meaning, was in high agreement with the ideals he had adhered to and followed for many years. There was no deviation at all. And the details it presented, every dot and stroke, every structure, every change, seemed to have been engraved into his memories and soul a long time ago. This was not the opening of a new world. It was the search for the homeland of his dreams. Later on, understanding, memories, and resonance dominated everything. The power that gushed out was like a great river that converged 100 rivers. It pushed forward layer by layer without end. Under the push of this power, Luo Nan had already ignored everything he knew and felt. He only pondered and experienced the word I. Gradually, those complicated details were exhausted, and the area he wanted to reach became narrower and narrower. Unknowingly, he suddenly reached some kind of indescribable limit. The surging power suddenly collided with the impregnable high wall of a dam. With a loud bang, it violently shook, and then rapidly contracted. The starry sky of the virtual brain's interface instantly collapsed and condensed into a single point. Luo Nan's perception and consciousness collapsed at the same time. It was unknown how much time had passed, but a crack suddenly opened amidst the primal chaos. A single line pierced through the boundless. A single line passed through the dim light. A single line pierced through the void. 3 straight lines crisscrossed and pierced through the origin point, which had collapsed to the limit. It was like a coordinate system, but it was not mathematics. It was a kind of intuition. The unique structure of information went from a point to a line, from a line to a surface, and then to a 3-dimensional space. It continued to flow and change. During this process, the surroundings of Xia City, the surrounding seas, and the wilderness, as well as the millions and millions of living beings that lived and multiplied on them, all manifested their brand new concepts layer by layer. These objects, living beings, and changes that existed objectively seemed to have been painted anew by an extraordinary painter. They revealed inconceivably vivid forms. Luo Nan's horizons were broadened anew. He observed everything with clairvoyance, feeling new and amazed. It seemed that every detail contained sufficient information. There were even more subtle things that appeared within the range of his clairvoyance and the coverage of his soul cloak. They were like countless fragile bubbles. Most of them were not fixed. They had not even truly taken shape. Though they revealed gorgeous colors, they would vanish in large swathes in an extremely short amount of time. Then, they would form in large swathes. Luo Nan watched these things as if he were watching the undulating surface of the sea near the shore. The bubbles, which pushed and squeezed against each other, formed a grand ocean-like scale with astonishing numbers. They painted this world with extremely dazzling colors. Though this was his first time witnessing such a marvel, he had an intense feeling. In the end, he formed a judgment, even though this was completely different from his usual understanding. This was the mental world. Luo Nan was just about to take a closer look when a cold and towering force suddenly crashed into him like a flying peak. It caused this gorgeous scene to violently shake. A familiar thought appeared at this moment. You're quite serious in preparing your lesson. Chapter 548. The person who came was undoubtedly Her Majesty Empress Wu. However, Luo Nan didn't know whether she was mocking or praising him when he sensed this telepathic thought. In the next second, the oppressive feeling and the feeling of impact as the peak flew over, as well as the resulting sense of crisis, pushed him out of the realm of illusory and real, returning him to a more realistic plane. He discovered that his soul strength had unconsciously sunk down on the mental plane. It had already entered the abyss region, and it even affected the deeper layers. No wonder Her Majesty Empress Wu had caught him red-handed. But at the same time, the massive amount of detailed information he had combed and harvested was gathered together. Layer by layer, it became real benefits. Her Majesty Empress Wu's telepathic thought arrived before he could experience the deeper changes. You have casually invaded the plane of consciousness of others. This is the crime of voyeurism. According to the law, you should be detained, but you can be released on bail. Do you need to pay bail? If you're trustworthy enough, then fine. Luo Nan was already covered in lice. He wasn't in the mood to tease others right now. Especially when he heard Her Majesty Empress Wu describe the plane of consciousness. His curiosity and thirst for knowledge could no longer be restrained. It's related to the plane of consciousness. Aren't those bubbles? Please shut up. Her Majesty Empress Wu bluntly refused his request to communicate. According to my understanding of the situation, every ability user has their own unique insights in this domain. My medicine is another's poison. Peeping isn't enough. Do you want to murder me? Then forget it. Her Majesty Empress Wu's attitude was clear. Regardless of whether or not this reason was valid, Luo Nan didn't need to say anything more. Her Majesty Empress Wu gave him a reminder. I'm very happy that you're working hard, but please don't be too high profile. It's not good to scare the cats and dogs and harm the flowers and plants. Huh. The cold and towering power erupted once more. The incorporeal pressure completely expelled Luo Nan from the mental plane he was currently in. Luo Nan's mental senses took advantage of the situation to leap into the air and return to the polar domain. Almost at the instant he returned, he saw with a far-sighted perspective that a few consecutive waves of unique order fluctuations had cut into the region of the level he was previously at. Looking at the direction, not a single wave came from the city. A portion came from the wilderness outside the city, and another portion came from the open sea. This showed that the effects of the Xia City branch's denial order were quite good. However, from another point of view, the waves it sensed could cross hundreds of kilometers and travel up and down the abyssal region. The source of these fluctuations seemed to be quite powerful. They were at least B+ rank psychic, or even higher. However, Her Majesty Empress Wu's majestic might stretched across the night sky, suppressing the surroundings. Those fluctuations that cut in were instantly crushed into pieces, collapsing into nothingness. Was this a cover for him? If he really got entangled by them, it would be troublesome. Luo Nan gave his thanks in secret, but his heart stirred when he saw this scene. He wasn't in a hurry to leave this troublesome area. Instead, he used his usual, pure observation mode to observe from afar in the polar domain. He wanted to see how Her Majesty Empress Wu's mighty power on the mental plane, as well as how those probing fluctuations that cut in from the outside intersected and surged in the mental world. He also wanted to see how this invisible confrontation would affect the misty sea where billions of bubbles were born and destroyed. Oh, it was truly a gorgeous, complex, and fragile scenery. The confrontation on the mental plane didn't last long. It lasted for a dozen seconds at most. The fluctuations that cut in from the outside retreated in defeat one after another, and Her Majesty Empress Wu's mighty power dissipated into nothingness. However, Luo Nan's eyes were filled with countless details, making it seem exceptionally long. Luo Nan didn't want to leave this wonderful state for a time, but the problem was that Cat Eye's soft voice rang in his ear a few seconds later. Boss? Boss. As his believer, Cat Eyes should have some understanding of the state he was in right now. She wouldn't disturb him for no reason. Something must have happened since he was forcefully interrupted in his state. Luo Nan opened his eyes. It was hard for him to completely separate himself from the misty and colorful mental world for a time. His gaze swept across the several figures in the hall. The mental plane and the material plane worked at the same time, giving him some insights. Yes, there was one more discovery. The several people in the hall were already lacking in confidence, and now they were getting goosebumps from Luo Nan's gaze. Cat Eyes pursed her lips and raised her hand in an attempt to divert his attention. Don't blame me. Her Majesty Empress Wu just sent an order. She told a certain someone to not jump around like that. She told him to honestly teach. She was clearly praising me a few dozen seconds ago. Luo Nan's attention was indeed diverted for the time being. He shook his head, temporarily suppressing the marvelous scene of the mental world to the bottom of his heart. He nodded to Worker Zhai, who had come specifically to cooperate with him in teaching. Worker Zhai, I'll have to trouble you tonight. It's my job. Worker Zhai looked at Luo Nan curiously as he spoke. He had no idea what had just happened. Luo Nan turned his head to look at the color of the sky outside the window. The pitch-black curtain of night had already covered the entire jungle. The intense contrast of the color of the sky and the enormous difference in time were enough to prove the nature of some of the events that had just happened. However, Luo Nan only skimmed through his mind for a moment. 2 seconds later, he entered the virtual brain interface. He had pondered and comprehended so much just now. He needed to understand what sort of changes had occurred in the virtual brain interface. He needed to understand how much he could borrow from the plane of reality. Right now in the virtual brain interface, millions and millions of stars were still densely clustered within the virtual brain's outline at the center. However, Luo Nan was able to see the marvelous and mysterious word, I, within with a single glance. The word I was completely different from the mother tongue he had been familiar with since childhood, including the word I in a limited number of foreign languages. It was even more complex to the extreme. However, after going through layer upon layer of research, the sense of order and layering that had been sorted out from within made him feel pleasing to the eye, even with millions and millions of stars as the background. He was filled with a sense of accomplishment. As for the other elements that revolved around the virtual brain galaxy, there weren't any major changes. The elements that were still being analyzed, like the Blood Soul Temple. Their progress was also following the prescribed order. Then Luo Nan opened the only element that had been completely analyzed. It was Jin Tong's Soul Light Seed. The assembly interface appeared in the first instant. A glaring blood-colored pop-up window followed it like a shadow, flickering in the center of the interface. This warning pop-up window would appear every time the assembly interface was opened. It would automatically disappear after 3 seconds, reminding the user of the abnormal nature of this mode. Luo Nan swept his eyes over it. The hieroglyphs were arranged neatly on top of it. The general idea was, this is an emergency configuration of equipment. Unpredictable consequences may occur when using it. Temporary strengthening must be done according to the technological requirements. Standard parts must be replaced when the conditions are met. Temporary strengthening? How should it be done? The related technological requirements. Huh? Luo Nan was stunned on the spot. The meaning of these words, no, the current situation was, he actually understood it? You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.